Okay, my name is Dale Libby. I'm the CEO of the Gathering Place. I'm also the coordinator for the Brazoria County Alzheimer's Awareness Project. And in normal times, we provide 42 hours of free respite for caregivers in 10 different churches every month in Brazoria County. I run a couple of support groups. We have a speakers bureau. And for the Awareness Project, we put on conferences. And so today is our conference that we were going to have at the Lake Jackson Civic Center, but I can't get enough people in there because of attendance restrictions. So decided to have a webinar instead. So that's what you're seeing today. I also do free memory screenings in the libraries in November, and we are actually going to be able to do that this year. We also put on our brain fair in March. We weren't able to do that this year, but we are going to do that, I hope, next year. It's March 27th at the fairgrounds. We do a bunch of other things. So, you know, the bottom line is, while COVID-19 has really put a kink in what we do, we have pivoted and we are doing things for our community and for our participants and for our caregivers. And so today's webinar is one of those things, okay? And I wasn't going to let this get in the way of being able to do that. So what would have happened today is y'all would have been at the Lake Jackson Civic Center, and we would probably had about 30 vendors there that you could have gone to visit and picked up materials from and stuff like that. And at lunchtime, you would have got a free lunch. I'm sorry, no free lunch today. But what I want to start off this first half hour with is I got some of our people who would have been at this conference and would have had a table there to make a short video about what they do. Okay, and I want to show those videos, and that's what we're going to do during this first half hour, and then we'll come on with the rest of our presentations and things. So with that in mind, this first video I want to show is from Shelley Crosby at Care Builders at Home. She's here in Lake Jackson. She's been a big supporter of the Gathering Place for years, and in fact, yesterday, she and some of her employees were at an event that we actually did have. We do something called Memory Matters, which is an hour-and-a-half mini health fair. We get CVS to do flu shots, UTMB comes and does blood pressure checks, and we do memory screenings. And Shelley and her group did the memory screenings for us yesterday at Lake Jackson Manor. So we're very happy and thankful for her to do that with us. So I'm going to go over here and share my screen, and you can watch and listen to what Shelley has to say about her business and what she does. And so we're going to do that. Let me go right over here. And I'm going to start her. Here she is. Okay, so this is Shelley Crosby.
Hi there. How is everyone doing out there? Oh, yeah, this mask. You know, we're in a different time these days, but since I'm in here by myself, I'm going to take it off so that y'all can hear me better. My name is Shelley Crosby, and I am the owner and administrator of Care Builders at Home here in Lake Jackson. And we do non-medical in-home care for senior citizens and handicapped adults. We go in and help with things like bathing, dressing, light housekeeping, meal preparation, transportation, medication reminders, go shopping for you, or simply just be there for companionship if that's what you need. All of our people are our employees. They're not contract service, so we pay all of our employees taxes, insurance, and we bond them. That keeps you from having to do that. A lot of people don't know that if you use a contract worker or somebody as private, you do have to pay 7.65% of their payroll tax to the IRS in order for them to get credit with the IRS and for you to get credit for paying it as well. Also, we do background checks, which is a local, state, and federal background check. We do drug screens. We do a 12-panel drug screen. We CPR certify and TB test all of our caregivers. And they're also trained and tested on their skills. So you know you're getting a good quality caregiver when we come in. We are very aware of the current COVID situation, and we are following all the CDC guidelines that are being set before us. And we have not had any of our caregivers or our clients come down with the virus as of now. I won't say that that won't happen because I don't know what the future holds, but we are doing everything the CDC is telling us in order to not have that happen. We have a strong administrative staff, and one of us is on call 24/7. So you never get an answering machine when you call us. One of us will pick it up. I always say, if you get an answering machine, we might have stepped away to the potty for a second, but we'll get right back to you. So don't worry about having to wait for somebody to call you back. We'll be right back with you if you call. We're locally owned and operated. I am the owner, and I've been here all my life, know lots of people. We have a local office. All of our girls are from the local area. So you know that somebody's not having to drive from Houston or wherever it is to get to you. They're going to be there quickly. And you set the time. It's not we just show up whenever we feel like it. You tell us when you want us to be there and what you want us to do. We take private pay, we take long-term care insurance, and we also take the Veterans Aid and Attendance Program, and we have a company that I personally pay to help us with the procedure of getting you set up on Veterans Aid and Attendance benefits. And this is for not only the veteran, but also their surviving spouse. So if you were married to a veteran and he or she has since passed away, then you are able to still get that benefit if you have the qualifications, which means you need help with at least 2 activities of daily living, and if your income is within the guidelines that they set. But we help you with all of that, and it doesn't cost you anything. We do the work. So we hope that if you have a need for somebody to come in and do some of the simple things for you that might be a little more difficult for you these days, you give Care Builders at Home a call. Our number is 979-258-6728. And you can also look us up on the web at carebuildersathome.lakejackson.com. God bless you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Shelley, for that. And I'm going to move on to our next video. Ann Lou from the Alvin Pharmacy has been with us at some of our conferences in Alvin, and she would have been here, I'm sure, if we would have been able to do this in person. But since we're not, here we are, and I am going to share hers so you can see what Alvin Pharmacy is all about. So let me share my screen. And there's Ann, and here we go.
Helping our customer feel better and live longer. So we're going to take you behind the scene in our care pharmacy. Please follow. We have lots of mask selections. We have surgical masks. We have KN95. We have some hand sanitizer. And then we also have CBD and Nanda, which is our high-end CBD products that all the all warranties come with it. And we have original products. And then we have some other vitamins that are unique. For example, diabetes RX support. These are to be taken when you're diabetic and you're taking a diabetic medication such as metformin, because it helps to replenish the vitamins that being depleted by your body. So another service that we offer here at Alvin Care Pharmacy is compounding. So what it is it's a custom-made medication that is just tailored to what you need. For example, we have things ranging from pain medication to hormones, or to beauty supplies like scar, cream, or hair growth. Hi there, Savannah from Alvin Care Pharmacy. So here at the pharmacy, we have a program for our patients that are on, say, multiple medications, taking at different times during the day. So it's called dispel or blister packaging. So this is a free service that our pharmacy actually offers to all of our patients on multiple medications. So what they would do is they would just bring in all the meds that they're currently on, what time they're taking it at, say they're taking it in the morning or in the evening or any time in between, and we'll go ahead and put it together in a blister pack for them. So I have several examples here. This is kind of what it looks like. And so, yeah, that's just one of the many services that we offer here.
Okay, so that's another one of our community partners, Alvin Pharmacy. And what I would like to do now is play one from Help Incorporated. Fred Ortiz is the relatively new owner of Help Incorporated. Those of you who know Fred from Lake Jackson, he was in charge of the EMTs for a long, long time, and he retired and he bought Help Incorporated. And Help Incorporated has been in business for a long time, and they've been a big sponsor for us. They are always at the Brain Fair. They help do screenings in the libraries. They've helped with Memory Matters events and things like that. So I wanted to have a chance for you to hear from Fred about all the services that that Help Incorporated provides. So I am going to go get his video, and we are going to see that. Let me close this other one. All right. Okay, I'll share my screen. And there's Help.
Hi, I'm Fred Ortiz from Help Inc. Many times people ask me what it is that Help Inc. does. There are many different terms for what we do, in-home care and senior care being two of the most common. We prefer to call our service compassionate companion care. We seek to enhance, sustain, and support clients at every stage of life. This includes a long list of services, some of which include cooking, light housework, coordinating care with home health, transportation, errands, personal assistance, laundry, dishes, or simply being there for your loved one when you can't. We provide care when and where you need it, from helping a mother with her newborn to providing assistance with elderly hospice patients, and at every stage of life in between. We have helped our clients by providing affordable, compassionate companion care for over 20 years. We'd love to help you too. Contact us today.
All right, so that's Help Incorporated. Again, you know, if we were all in person at the Lake Jackson Civic Center, Fred would have a table there, you know, Shelley Crosby would have been there. And I'm sorry that you can't pick up anything from them, but there's some good information. And now I got one other video I want to show. Tracy Copeland is the marketing director at the Sweeney Community Hospital. And she's made a video that doesn't so much talk about what Sweeney Hospital does, but rather talks about the partnership between Sweeney Hospital and the Gathering Place. I was surprised when I watched the video. So it's a good testimony for us, and completely unsolicited, because I asked her to do what the other people did. Anyway, here is Tracy's video, so I hope you enjoy it.
Hello, it's Tracy Copeland. I work with Sweeney Community Hospital, and I'm very proud to be able to talk with you guys today about my thoughts and take on the Gathering Place, as well as the really neat and exciting partnership that we have with the Gathering Place. So thank you for letting me take time to talk about this. First, let me start off with what all I am in, that a largely volunteer organization could successfully set up a meeting as good and as big as this one. That speaks volumes for TGP. So having known several people who I love very much, who volunteered with the organization and do currently, it was clear early on that the Gathering Place was going to have a great and positive impact on our community. The thought of people, volunteers no less, taking time to spend hours with those suffering with this terrible disease shows a depth of volume and care rarely seen in other organizations. I've always said something that some might find crass, and I apologize if you do. It's easy to fall in love with a baby or a puppy or a kitten and then spend time volunteering for them and with them. But to love our seniors like the people who serve at TGP is a gift to all of those who are currently serving their families as caregivers. These communities could not be the same without that. Those being served, including your younger patients, in my opinion, they are still the greatest generation, no matter what kind of labels we try to put on people that have to be in a box. These are great, great people, and it just makes me very happy that there are so many of you who will take care of them. Without a doubt, they're caregivers of Alzheimer's patients should be lauded. Those people who live with that person, who take care of that person, they are on the front lines for each of those for whom they care. The free moments that the Gathering Place allows these caregivers has got to be invaluable to them, and I'm certain it is. You guys are all true champions, whether you're a caregiver to a person at home or you are there at the Gathering Place. I can't ever say enough about it. So when it comes to the partnership that Sweeney Hospital has with TGP, I wish I could say it was my idea. It wasn't. Dale and Audrey actually approached our senior counseling team and our assisted living leadership team. And I'm blessed to be able to say that I get to be part of that. And as far as I know, being the first west of the Brazos organization to work so closely with TGP, I'm very proud of that. But it provided some challenges, but nothing that team couldn't overcome. In fact, it's just been smooth sailing, not because of us, more so that the Gathering Place employees and volunteers. So I close with a message to caregivers and to the Gathering Place volunteers and to the Gathering Place employees. Thank you and God bless you for what you're doing. You're changing lives and you're making lives more livable. Thanks for giving me this time.
Okay, so there's a message from Tracy from the Sweeney Community Hospital, and we certainly appreciate her endorsement of what we do. like I said, that was completely unsolicited. All right. Now, I'm looking, and we have a few more attendees than what we had earlier on, so I'm going to do a little bit of a repeat before I introduce our speaker for this morning, in case you came in late. Again, my name is Dale Libby. I'm the CEO of the Gathering Place, and also the coordinator for the Brazoria County Alzheimer's Awareness Project. And you know, during normal times, we provide 42 hours of free respite in 10 different churches every month in Brazoria County for caregivers of Alzheimer's patients. And we also have a couple of support groups and a speakers bureau. So we talk at different events. And then the Awareness Project puts on conferences, which is what you're participating in today. As I mentioned before, today we would have been at the Lake Jackson Civic Center, but due to COVID-19 and attendance number restrictions and social distancing, I wasn't going to be able to get enough people in there like we've had previously. So instead of not doing anything, I decided, well, let's have a webinar. Okay, so while we aren't able to reach as many people as we might reach in person, we are providing this information. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. I also put on the memory screenings in the libraries in November, and those are actually going to go on this year. And we also do some things like Memory Matters events. We just had one yesterday, which are little mini health fairs at senior living facilities. And so we did one of those yesterday. And there's a number of other things that we do throughout the community. So the important part of all of this is that you know that while COVID-19 has caused a lot of things to be closed down and stop, we've just pivoted and we have changed how we're doing things, and we're still doing things. And we're, in fact, just to tell you, we've started a new program from the Gathering Place. It's called CompuTalk, and it's Zoom school for Alzheimer's patients. And we have like 14 students for this, and it's 3 times a week. And this is a program that's going to continue even after we are able to get meeting in person again and having our socials again, because we've picked up some new people who are younger patients who wouldn't necessarily come to one of our in-person gatherings. And we're doing the same kind of programming that we would do at our gatherings. Memory retrieval. They actually play bingo for a while one day. We have a lady from Alvin that does an art project with them. I've watched her do it. So we do the kind of things that we do. It's just all over Zoom. And it's worked out real well, and the students really enjoy it. So this is a program that's going to continue even after we get back in person. So I just wanted you all to know that the Gathering Place is alive and well, and we are reaching out to our participants, to our caregivers, and to the community with support and information about dementia and the things that you can do, which I'm going to go ahead now and introduce our speaker for today. There she is. And you can unmute yourself too in case, there you are. Okay, so our speaker today is Dr. Margaret Apostol. She's a medical director with Life Seasons Medical Clinic in Flower Mound, Texas. And she assists in the development of an integrative and functional medical clinic that specializes in Dr. Dale Bredesen's protocol for the treatment of Alzheimer's disease, mild cognitive impairment, and subjective cognitive impairment. And if any of you were on my webinar on June 30th, I talked about Dr. Bredesen and his protocol, okay? So she's a practitioner of it, okay? Dr. Apostol graduated from New York Institute of Technology, Bachelor of Science in Nutrition, and received her Doctor of Medicine from St. Matthew's University College of Medicine. She did her residency at Ohio State University Medical Center and a fellowship at the University of Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine. And I will let her tell you whatever else she wants about here, but we want to welcome Dr. Apostol to our conference today. So Dr. Apostol, thank you ever so much for doing this. I will let you share your screen, and I'm going to mute myself and hide myself too so people can't see me.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dale. I'm really happy to be here today. And I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And so, today we're going to talk about nutrition and lifestyle as the foundation for cognitive health. And this topic is obviously near and dear to us. Here at our clinic at Life Seasons Medical, we do about 50% of our practice is in cognitive health, and among other things. We specialize in Dr. Dale Bredesen's RECODE program, which stands for the Reversal of Cognitive Decline. And we are blessed and have the opportunity to directly talk and speak with Dr. Bredesen, who sometimes consults on some of our patients for his, professional insight. So I have a lot to talk about. I'm going to do my best to stay within the time limits because, as you can imagine, cognitive health is so complex. And when we're able to identify all the contributing factors that may play a role in cognitive decline, there's quite a few. So with that, we'll get started. And overall for the presentation, I'm just going to go over, the statistics, especially for Alzheimer's disease, and why current treatment modalities are failing. And so what we're wanting to do is identify the pathophysiology or the underlying causes that would contribute to this amyloid plaque that we see in the brain with Alzheimer's. I will familiar yourself with Dr. Bredesen's work. And as we find out, there are different categories to how we decide, the underlying contributing factors to cognitive decline. So things like the inflammation, glycotoxicity, and so forth. And I will get into that. But there are different kinds of dementia, and they're not all the same. And not all dementia is Alzheimer's. We'll talk about the Bredesen 7. We'll talk about lifestyle interventions and nutritional interventions. So scary enough, the numbers are growing, and Alzheimer's is now the third leading cause of death in the United States, according to the CDC. And we're in the United States, this great country where we have access to the best healthcare resources, we have financial resources, yet for some reason, Alzheimer's continues to grow. And 45 million Americans that are currently living are projected to develop Alzheimer's disease. So 1 in 3 seniors will die with Alzheimer's or some other dementia. That's an incredible number. That's 1/3 of seniors. And so why is it that with one of the best medical systems in the world, we're not able to steer these numbers down? Okay, and in 2020, Alzheimer's and other dementias will cost the nation almost $305 billion by 2015. So are we in the midst of an epidemic? I would definitely say so. And we're on this one-way road, which is a dead end, because the current medical model is failing. So 99.6% of drugs that were tested for Alzheimer's in clinical trials could not even make it out of the testing phase. And only 0.4% have reached the market, which may help lessen the symptoms. So not really the best option here. And then from 2000 to 2010, there were 244 experimental clinical trials, and only one drug was approved, which was memantinib, or Namenda that we call, in 2003. So what we really know, and what we're finding with the work we're doing here at the clinic and throughout the country, is that there is hope. And with Dr. Dale Bredesen's work, if you're not familiar with him, he is a world-renowned neurologist who wrote the book, The End of Alzheimer's Disease, back in 2017, and his new book that just came out recently in August. And he pioneered the program into trying to reverse cognitive decline. And he was able to find multiple factors. And so what he calls in his book, the 36 holes in the roof, And basically, if you think about it, imagine having a roof where you have 36 holes and it's raining. And likely you're going to do your best and try to patch those holes up, and as many as you can. So our goal with the program is to identify those 36 holes. Where are they, and what are the factors that are contributing to cognitive decline? And so here we come up with the subtypes. So we can classify dementia into 6 different subtypes. Type 1 is inflammatory. We know, I'm sure we've heard this word, inflammation. Inflammation is one of those dangerous things that tends to be quiet. It's like a fire that just burns inside. It's like a little flame that never dies. And we know lots of chronic diseases are attributed to chronic inflammation. The next one is 1.5, which is glycotoxicity, and that means just toxicity from sugar, having diabetes, high fasting glucose, insulin resistance. In the United States, diabetes is increasing tremendously because we are now consuming more processed foods. Type 2 is called trophic. What trophic means is the nutrients and the hormones that we need to support our brain health. The third type would be toxic. And now, unfortunately, we're seeing more and more of this subtype. And toxicity can be in the form of heavy metals like mercury, environmental toxins, mycotoxins, which are mold toxins. And believe it or not, the majority of the patients that I see are under this toxic category. And then we have type 4, which is a vascular component. So these are people that have had strokes, they have cardiovascular disease where they're not getting good blood supply to the brain, okay? And then the last one is type 5, which is traumatic. And these are just simple brain injuries, whether it was from an accident or a sports injury. So when we're looking at the underlying subtypes for our patients, you can imagine most patients have more than one subtype, but we often find there is one that is more predominant than others. And that's where we try to focus our treatment plan. So we'll go over each subtype briefly just to give you a sense of all the things that we would contribute to those underlying issues. And type 1 is inflammatory. That's that flame that just never dies. And so this low-grade inflammation can be incredibly dangerous, not just for the brain, but for our heart and other systems in our body. But these are things like chronic stress, high consumption of sugar, which is a big problem in our country. The same with alcohol, processed foods, periodontitis, which is inflammation of the gums in the mouth. And I will talk about this as to why that's important. Metabolic syndrome. We have a lot of people in this country with metabolic disease. So this is someone with high blood pressure, high glucose, and large abdominal fat in the abdomen. Leaky gut and gut dysbiosis, you're going to learn more with Dr. Hyman's video, but this is such a great topic because they call the gut the second brain, and we know that the gut can provide lots of inflammation since the majority of our immune system is in our gut. So we have to look at gut health as a major contributing factor to chronic inflammation. We have things like pathogens or infectious agents. These are viruses, parasites that we can find in the stool, Lyme disease, okay? And then drugs. You can see the list is that these are drugs that a lot of people take probably on a daily basis. And what's ironic is that they're anti-inflammatory by trade, but really they cause lots of inflammation in the gut. And these are things like your Motrin and your ibuprofens. And most, seniors I've seen are now on PPIs, which are proton pump inhibitors. These are our antacids, that Nexium and Protonix. So we need proper abdominal stomach pH to digest our food and to extract the nutrients with the foods that we eat. And then 1.5 glycotoxicity. Sugar is toxic, okay? We need sugar as fuel for our brain, but we don't need that much. And what happens is when you have excess sugar that's circulating in our body, it attaches to proteins and it damages those protein structures. So think of diabetics who have neuropathy. They have nerve damage because the sugar attached to the nerve. So we see this with simple blood testing. We see high fasting blood sugar. Insulin resistance is when the hormone insulin is what we need to take the sugar that's in our blood and put it away in cells. So think of a lock and key mechanism. The insulin knocks on the door to the cell and says, here's some sugar, and the cell will take it up and do what it will to utilize it for fuel. So we're looking at fasting insulin levels, and what happens is with resistance, the receptor is no longer receptive to the insulin signal. So the insulin knocks on the door, but the cell is not answering. And so you have insulin just circulating as nowhere to go. And then the hemoglobin A1C, we're looking at an average of sugars over a 3-month period. Now, type 2 trophic support, you can imagine our brain requires lots of nutrients and lots of hormones to support it. So we're trying to identify those specific hormones and vitamins. So when we optimize these things, we maintain synaptic connections. And synaptic connections are the brain connections. They look like little fingers. They connect to one another and they send messages. It supports growth factor. And I don't know if you guys know, but there are over 500 trillion synaptic connections in the brain. So we want to maintain as many of those connections as possible. And with dementia, those connections die off. We want to maintain BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and neurotrophin-3. And then hormones, we're looking at all kinds of hormones, the sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone and DHEA. We look at thyroid and cortisol as big players in neuronal health. And then lastly, the vitamins, the B vitamins, the vitamin D, the magnesium, copper, zinc, potassium, and amino acids are so vital to not only support brain health, but to even produce the neurotransmitters that we need for our brain to function. And type 3 toxic. What's scary enough is this is becoming more of a problem. And we live in a toxic world. We're exposed to hundreds of chemicals on a day-to-day basis without even knowing. And there's thousands of chemicals that haven't even been tested. So we're not sure what the long-term effects are of this chronic exposure, but we do know that heavy metals is incredibly neurotoxic, specifically mercury. And a new thing that's kind of coming out is mycotoxins, which is mold. And so a lot of people don't think of mold as a problem. It can cause, we know, respiratory issues, but some species of mold, specifically the ochratoxins, are incredibly neurotoxic. So we're able to identify those through testing. Now, environmental toxins, you know, we are exposed from the foods that we eat. There's lots of pesticides and herbicides that's sprayed on our crops. Air pollution is becoming a big problem. In fact, indoor air is a lot more polluted than outdoor air nowadays. And then think of the chemical solvents that we use. So these are things like lotions, perfumes. It could be work-related chemical solvents. So there's no shortage of exposures. And then type 4 vascular. So when we're looking at the vascular system, we're looking at cardiovascular disease. We want to optimize blood pressure, the cholesterol levels, okay? We're looking to see if people have had actual strokes or TIAs, which are transient ischemic attacks. And one thing I want to bring to your attention is hypoxia, which is low oxygen. Many people are walking around with obstructive sleep apnea. And when we think of apnea, we think of that stereotypical patient who is morbidly obese, typically more common in males than females. But I have seen sleep apnea in just the tiniest women. And so really it could be anyone. And so this is very important because if we're not getting oxygen at nighttime, we're not getting oxygen to our brain. And we know that oxygen delivers nutrients to the brain. And then traumatic. And so there are lots of people who've had car accidents or head injuries, some more severe than others. And this is the subtype that we try our best to support their brain as best we can. You know, clearly we can't undo the damage that has occurred, but we want to support their brain as best we can in those other measures. So let's look at the Bredesen 7. This is a wonderful picture. It's a nice, it almost looks like a snow globe. And we're going to look at each aspect of that globe. So that's exercise, sleep, stress, brain stimulation, detoxification, supplementation, and nutrition, and with neuroplasticity. So it's like a piece of the pie. You know, you could take one piece out and do well with it, But in reality, we need to optimize all those elements to be successful. And when we talk about cognition, we're talking about prevention of cognitive decline, and also people who already have cognitive decline, you can still implement these measures to reverse their cognitive decline. The earlier that we can identify their risk factors and their cognitive impairment, the best chance for success. So let's talk about exercise. I'm sure most of you know that we do know that exercise is good for us. But when it comes to brain health, it helps with blood flow. If you think about blood brings oxygen and nutrients. And so if we can enhance that blood flow, we'll get more of that to our brain. That BDNF, that brain-derived neurotrophic factor, helps grow nerve cells. So we really need it. We get dopamine and endorphins. So if you've ever exercised and got that, that high, that's what that is. It's that endorphin rush. It will improve sleep. It will decrease stress, optimize your body mass index, because we are an obese country and we're getting more and more obese. Even our children are. So this helps combat that. And keep in mind, we are primal creatures by nature. We were meant to move. We were never meant to be sedentary. And also improves insulin sensitivity. So when you exercise, your muscles need fuel. And so it takes that blood sugar and puts it in the muscles and therefore lowers your sugar levels. So there's different kinds of exercises. And people always ask, well, what's the best kind? It doesn't matter. It's whatever you enjoy. Walking, jogging, dancing, anything that brings you joy and movement is really what's important. And I don't call exercise, I just call it movement because that's what we're meant to do. So getting that blood flow for that BDNF, getting those nutrients delivered are incredibly important. Now with resistance training, which is that muscle training, right? Muscle is a neuroendocrine organ. And this is the one thing that I see is the biggest problem in the aging population. We have a bioimpedance scale at our clinic, and we actually measure muscle mass in addition to body fat. And I can tell you almost every single one has an incredibly low amount of muscle. And muscle is not for bodybuilders. We need muscle. It's an organ. It provides insulin sensitivity. It actually helps boost hormones. And so as we're dealing with an aging population, we have to maintain skeletal muscle health because in reality, it will help with our metabolic rate, right? As we age, our metabolism decreases, and having muscle will keep that high. It improves blood pressure. It improves cognitive performance, increases bone mineral density. Now, this is a problem, especially for women who are postmenopausal. They don't have the estrogen that they used to have to maintain that bone density. And with resistance training, that sheer force to the bone, right, makes the bone break down and it's forced to rebuild so that it's stronger and therefore increasing your bone density. It decreases inflammation. It improves mood and produces more hormones, so testosterone and growth hormone. And so the misconception, and I think women more than men, is that resistance training will make you muscular or bulky, and that is absolutely not true. Women do not have enough testosterone to maintain that large, bulky muscle mass. So the definition of a decline in skeletal muscle is the term sarcopenia. And so when you have less muscle, fat increases. You have more fat relative to muscle, and we call that sarcopenic obesity. And that's why as we get older, insulin resistance becomes problematic because there's less muscle to take that insulin in. And this can cause lots of disability. As a senior, we need strength, we need mobility, we need stabilization so we don't fall. And so being physically inactive will lead to muscle wasting along with malnutrition, which requires lots of protein to maintain muscle mass. And then we saw, like we said, a decrease in testosterone and growth hormone. So when we exercise in an aging population, we can maintain our ability to be independent so we don't have these risks of fall. It improves mental health. And then that social engagement, some seniors are isolated. Getting them out, walking with a friend or going to the local YMCA is so great for their cognitive health. And exercise will reduce all those risk factors like heart attack and stroke, and that risk of developing dementia, because again, it increases that BDNF. So let's talk about sleep. Now, sleep is a problem for us. Most people are getting very poor sleep, but sleep is so important because it actually consolidates our memories. And research is coming out, they're trying to identify what is so important about sleep. And science doesn't have it fully understood, but we know that it's kind of like the house sweeping, the cleaning house is what happens to our brain when we're sleeping. We need sleep to focus. We need sleep to learn new things. We need sleep to make decisions. And I'm sure some of you have experienced horrible sleep and tell me how sharp you were the next day. I get foggy, I don't think clearly, and that is a direct correlation to the quality of the sleep that you receive. The other thing that's important is there's something called a glymphatic system. And that's basically the lymphatic system, which is what removes waste in our body, in our brain. And you have to be in REM sleep state for that glymphatic system to work to remove that plaque, okay? So that beta amyloid plaque, that's the plaque responsible for Alzheimer's disease, actually gets cleared in REM state. So imagine not sleeping, you don't go through that REM cycle, you don't flush out that plaque. So it's so imperative. Sleep is fundamental and it's completely non-negotiable. And we have a really chronic insomnia problem in our country, almost 10 to 50% of adults. And it's actually worse in older patients. So we have to prioritize sleep. So why do we have so many sleep issues? Think about our environment. We are exposed to lots of external stimulation. We're not out in the wild. We're not in the quiet environment. We have lots of stress, lots of anxiety. Caffeine is a big problem too, especially if you're consuming it after 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Alcohol, it's a misconception that alcohol will help you sleep. It might help you fall asleep, but it causes such a poor quality of sleep. You don't get into that REM state. So that's not going to help you. We have shift workers, most of them in the healthcare field and other areas. And then overstimulation. So because electronic devices are the norm now, that blue light that comes out of cell phones or laptops and even TVs can stimulate our brain to stay awake. Now there are medical conditions that can interfere with sleep, which is that sleep apnea I talked about. Diabetes can, and that's because with diabetics, their sugars go up and down, kind of like a roller coaster. And so when it drops too low, our bodies are woken up out of protection because it's a dangerous low if we leave it alone. And then depression and ADHD can interfere with the quality of sleep. A lot of people have restless leg syndrome, and that's something that can be fixed by getting some blood work, making sure electrolytes and iron are okay. And then more women than men have these hormonal disruptions, these postmenopausal women who have hot flashes and night sweats. So there's so many reasons, and the key here is to identify the underlying cause of the sleep issue. So to kind of piggyback on that discussion of blue light, I don't know if you guys know, but the sun emits a blue light wavelength, and it stimulates our eyes to stay awake. And that's what these electronic devices are doing. They mimic the sun. And so these glasses at the bottom, if you can see, these are blue blockers. They range from different colors, from light yellow to a dark red. And the darker the lens, the more blue light that it blocks. I have personally had great experience with this. I used to work in the hospital all day, and the fluorescent lighting and the brightness of the computer screen was giving me headaches. And so I'd walk around, with these yellow goggles, these yellow glasses. I look like Elton John, but you know what? I didn't have headaches. So they were really effective. And if you have to stay up at night to do work or work on your computer, I would advise you to invest in these blue blockers. You can find them anywhere online. And then sleep apnea. This is where we're having that obstruction of oxygen entering our brain. And so we check oxygen levels. Here at our clinic, we have a take-home sleep monitor that people wear for about 3 days. And we're looking for drops under 90%. We really ideally need to be between 96 and 98%. But again, you're not getting oxygen to your brain, so your brain's not getting blood, it's not getting oxygen, it's not getting nutrients. And so this needs to be evaluated. And when we sleep poorly, we definitely sacrifice our memories. We have a hard time organizing and learning new information, and our thought process is less efficient. And then appetite dysregulation. I've experienced this many times where if I don't get a good night's sleep, I'm really hungry the next day. And that's a lot to do with our stress hormone, cortisol. So some good tips for a good night's sleep: try to create a bedtime routine. And so whatever that looks like for you, it's a ritual. It's something that you do every single night, and that tells your brain that it's time to go to sleep. Try to avoid those blue lights, those artificial lights before bedtime, at least about 2 to 3 hours prior. Make sure that the bedroom is quiet and it's dark and cool. So 68 degrees is about an optimal temperature for sleep. And use your bedroom only for sleep and sex. You should not be working in your bedroom or doing any other activities in your bedroom. And maintain a consistent sleep schedule, even if that means going to bed earlier. So waking up the same time, going to bed around the same time is going to help reset that circadian rhythm. And using diet and exercise to improve sleep. Limiting caffeine late in the day, avoiding alcohol before bedtime, and definitely addressing any underlying medical conditions. So really, what would be optimal is to get about 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep per night. And this should be priority for the most part. There are supplements that might be appropriate if you need help. I would discuss with your physician before starting any supplementation, especially if you're on chronic medications. There's lots of interferences. But just for your information, melatonin is an option. Some people do well with it, some people don't. It lasts about 6 hours, so unfortunately it'll get people to sleep, but it may not sustain them through the entire night. GABA is a great product. It's an inhibitory neurotransmitter, so it has a calming effect. Magnesium, a lot of us are so deficient in magnesium because we don't get it from the soil like we used to. Our water is devoid of minerals, and so magnesium has a very calming effect. 5-HTP or 5-hydroxytryptophan is the precursor to make serotonin. This can kind of help you sleep a little bit, especially if you have anxiety. Ashwagandha, wonderful adaptogenic herb, especially for people who have chronic stress. And then there's lemon balm, valerian root, and passion flower. You can find these at any health food store. It helps, it's almost like a sedating. You can take this in pill form. There's lots of teas with these ingredients. CBD is so popular nowadays. I would advise that you get some help with this and find a good quality CBD. I personally take it at nighttime. It doesn't make me fall asleep, but it gives me a deeper, better quality of sleep. And it's very noticeable the next day. Bacopa, wonderful adaptogenic herb that helps with stress reduction. And then hormone replacement. If women who are postmenopausal are suffering through the night, hormone replacement might be appropriate. So we're going to switch over to stress, and probably every single one of you has experienced stress, right? And that day-to-day fluctuation from mild stress to, high intense stress will wear our adrenals out. It's going to wear us down. But this is a protective mechanism from our body. It is a primal response. And so the danger that we perceive could be a real danger or perceived danger. So in terms of our protection as primal creatures, we had to have we had to feel and look around us in our environment for threats. So think about running from a bear. If a bear was chasing us, we are running for our lives. So we have these chemical reactions that go off, like cortisol and adrenaline and noradrenaline, because what that does, it says, here's your threat, you need to run away, and it helps shunt all the blood to our arms and our legs so we can physically run. But when you have a perceived danger, so that could be stress from work, that could be sitting in traffic. So there's no real threat, but the brain cannot tell the difference. And so the same chemical reaction occurs in the body, but you're not running anywhere. And that can take a toll, especially when it's persistent and it's day in and day out. It can really wear us thin. And cortisol, it's a good hormone to protect us, but too much of it is a bad thing. So what happens when we're in this constant state of stress? Our blood pressure and our pulse rate goes up because, again, our body's trying to pump blood to our extremities so we can run from our threat. Our breathing becomes faster. Digestive system slows down. So if all the blood is going to the arms and legs, Well, your body is not prioritizing, digesting that lunch that you had. Okay, so think of people with chronic constipation. Think of stress as a potential player. Our immune system gets temporarily suppressed, but it becomes permanently suppressed when it's long and sustained. Our muscles become tense so we can run, and then we're just alert. We're hyper alert, and so we're going to have sleep interruptions. And that cortisol, that stress hormone, really is linked with mental illness. And I don't know if you know, but stress can literally shrink the brain. And we can see it here. This is a SPECT scan. And this is a stress brain on the right. And so the areas where memories are stored and formed, which is the prefrontal cortex, starts to shrink. So we need cortisol to keep us alive from our threats, but our threats should not be lasting for days and months and years. So things that I would strongly really try to reduce that mental stress, here's some tips in terms of keeping a journal. That, when you're physically writing on a piece of paper, it's like you're a brain dump, you're getting your worries out. And I would do that before you go to sleep. It might help calm things down. If you have this long, to-do list, which most of us do nowadays, try to check off what you complete and prioritize your goals, and then create a plan for the next day. Music is just so relaxing. I mean, even babies, doze off if you play a lullaby, and we are no different. Music can really cause those brain waves in our brain, those calming waves, to enhance and make it easy to relax. Reading a book makes you feel relaxed. It does for me. I love reading. And, unless it's a stimulating and stressful book, I would focus on the type of genres that kind of make you, doze off. And get a massage from a friend or a partner. That muscle tension from that stress, it adds to our anxiety, so we can get a massage and just kind of relax in that sense. And then there are relaxation techniques to help prepare the body for sleep, which I'll explain in the next slide. But talk with a friend. We should never be alone. I mentioned before, we are social creatures. We should never be alone. We were never meant to handle these burdens by ourselves. So for stress reduction, we talked about massage, but there are mind-body interventions. Meditation and mindfulness is becoming so popular nowadays. There's lots of smartphone apps that actually help you with that. So look into those things. It might be challenging to quiet the mind, but it takes practice, just like everything else. Yoga. Tai Chi is great, especially for the older population, because it's a slow kind of waving movement, and studies have shown that it actually lowers blood pressure. So it's such a great thing to look into if you can find the local class that offers it. And then if there are very stressful life events, we all have stress. Looking into therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy, which basically changes how your outlook on life is. And there's no stigma to getting psychological help. It was a stigma before, but now most people are open about it. And so it should not be discouraged. And then things like acupuncture can actually help as well. And then my favorite is nature bathing. And so there's something called forest medicine, where you use nature to heal yourself. And they have done studies where if you go out in nature, your heart rate can go down, your blood pressure can go down, your anxiety can go down. And I love going outside. There's just something about the trees and the air and the sound of the birds that's just so relaxing. And I think, our DNA hasn't changed. We're still those primal creatures, and we were meant to be outside. So we'll switch over to stimulation. Now, this is brain stimulation. And the misconception here is that we're getting older, we're aging, and our brain stays the same. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Our brains continue to grow, and we really are responsible of promoting that neuronal health. So there's something called neuroplasticity, and that's what our brains can do. They can grow and they can adapt. So imagine learning a new instrument, right? That's not something that your brain is used to. And so now you're forced to make these new connections with this new talent, because the brain has to now learn this new instrument. So we want to challenge our brains, because that provides opportunity for growth. Just like when we exercise, we challenge our bodies, we challenge our muscles. The same with brain stimulation. So this is a really great picture because this is a concept of neuroplasticity. And so if we look here, we see these blue neurons. This is a pathway. Think of it as a thought process. Maybe you have a certain thought and you have it associated with another thought. And so by default, your brain continues to have those same thoughts. But with training, with brain training, with neuroplasticity, you can reroute that thought to a different pathway and the default path is no longer valid. And then look at here, you have, these are neurons, and look at these dendritic connections. So remember, we have 500,000 trillion connections. So when you have this, like example was learning a new instrument, now this neuron is creating new pathways with the new neurons. And so we have so much capacity to increase our brain strength, increase our connections. We are the captains to our brain. We are the captain of our own ship. And so no matter what your age, we can always stimulate our brain. And there are other things like puzzles and listening to music. And what I hear a lot from seniors, they'll say that they're engaging in brain activity in something that they've been doing for 20 years. It doesn't count because it is innate to them. You want to do something new. You want to do something that's challenging and even uncomfortable, because that's how we can create those new pathways. So brain training, there are computer programs that you can do. Brain HQ we work with. This is definitely not an easy test, but we try to do, we're looking at categories to improve attention, memory, intelligence, speed, and navigation. So the biggest complaint I get from our patients is that it's so hard. And actually what I tell them is that that's good, because if it was starting to get easy, that's a bad sign. So we want it hard. We want to be challenged. So we're going to move on to detox, and forgive me for speaking quickly because I want to cover everything. But detoxification is an element that's ignored by modern medicine. I mean, the topic of toxicity doesn't really come out of a lot of physicians' mouths. And this is not something on their radar because it's also not part of training. But we have testing and we're able to identify lots of toxins. And in fact, if you think about it, you can't live in this modern world without any exposures. You have to have some kind of exposures. So we're going to look at the heavy metals, the molds, and the environmental toxins. Now, mercury. Mercury amalgams or silver fillings was very common decades ago. They don't do this anymore, but many people still have residual fillings. And so, unfortunately, the silver fillings are made up of 55% mercury. Mercury is a neurotoxin. There are no safe levels of mercury. And mercury has such a long half-life, it actually will last in the body at least 20 years. So if you look at those fillings on top, imagine chewing and biting your teeth. Every time you do that, 10 micrograms of mercury is released into circulation. They're not benign fillings. And so I would recommend strongly to get them removed. I probably would not go to a conventional dentist because there needs to be a specialized approach in the removal, because you can imagine removing the mercury will dislodge it into circulation. And so you want to go to a specialized dentist that has safety precautions in place, and you want to remove about 1 or 2 at a time, and then wait a few months before removing to the next. If you do too much at one time, it might be overwhelming for your system to handle. And then mercury is found in fish. I have actually met quite a few people that have mercury toxicity because they love sushi. And so once in a while, it's not going to kill you, but mercury is additive. Remember, it's a half-life of 20 years, so it doesn't go away. You don't excrete it. So we want to focus on the fish that is lowest in mercury. Think of smash, that's smash mnemonic, sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, and herring. Those are your best bet when you're looking for a fish. And of course, you always want wild caught and not fish farm. And then get tested. We look for mercury. We do a test called the tri-mercury test. We can also order a heavy metals panel. So we're looking other things like lead and cadmium and arsenic. When it comes to heavy metal toxicity, I would work with a functional medicine practitioner, someone who's knowledgeable in chelating heavy metals, because it's not, you want to do this safely, and it is not something that's done very quickly. Now, if you remember, I talked about inflammation and periodontitis. This is that inflammation in the gums, right? So if you have had lots of dental work, root canals, implants, you name it, that opening in that cavity can seed bacteria. And we think that oral bacteria is confined to the mouth. It's actually not. It can be released in circulation. And then think about the connection between our brain and oral bacteria. Our mouth is very close to our cavity in our brain. And so a lot of times you can have these chronic infections that seed in the brain. We think of P. gingivalis and these other species that we look at. So if you see periodontitis, this chronic inflammation of the gums, you can see where bacteria on that third picture, it can pocket inside, and then it creates that low-grade inflammation. So a clean mouth is a happy brain. So if we're trying to be aggressive, we will do oral DNA testing where we actually swab the mouth and look for different bacterial species that grows in the mouth. And certain bacterial species are correlated with Alzheimer's and even cancers like colon cancer. Dental Sidon is a brand, it's a nutraceutical brand. They make toothpaste and mouthwashes that are really good, especially for eradicating P. gingivalis. I always recommend using an electric toothbrush. It's a lot better. You can get more plaque removal, and then a water flosser. You can even use oral probiotics. It's a chewable that you put in your mouth, and it tries to inoculate the mouth with the good bugs. And of course, always evaluate the source. Functional biological dentist might be your best bet in that case. And then mycotoxins. You know, living in the South, especially, you know, you guys are, you know, close to Houston, that hot, humid weather, there's more opportunity for mold growth. And mold comes in many forms. There are different species of mold. Some are neurotoxic. Mold can be in the home, and it can also be in our food. So we see mold contaminated in things like grains, corn, oatmeal. Coffee is a big harbor for mycotoxins. So food is a big player here. So we always want to make sure that we get clean sources. But when we think of mycotoxicity, what are the symptoms? It can be very vague. It can be just that fatigue and weakness, you know, allergy type symptoms like sinus congestion. And I see, interesting with mycotoxins, these neuropathy symptoms, these nerve symptoms, electric shock sensations that make absolutely no sense to neurologists, and they're bizarre. And so that's a clue for me to look for mycotoxins, but it does cause dementia or cognitive impairment. So when we want to look, if we are curious to see if we're having mold exposure, we can do lab testing. It's a urine collection for mycotoxins. You can evaluate your home, so you can either hire a professional company where they, you know, take some sampling and then let you know what is growing. But you don't have to see mold to have it. People think they have to see it and visualize it, but it hides, and it's on, you know, it's behind drywall, it's in vents. So, you know, getting a professional evaluation might be helpful. You could do a do-it-yourself test. It's called the ERMI test, and basically it looks like a little Swiffer, and you walk around your home and you just take dust samples and you send it back to the company. It's not the best way to look for mold, because you can imagine you might miss a lot of spots. But it's better than nothing. And then getting a HEPA filter, because air pollution, remember, is indoor pollution is worse than outside air pollution. So things like using HEPA filters to help filter those toxins and even mold. Now, touch quickly on viral infections. Now, this can be a problem because a viral infection can cause neuroinflammation. So herpes, most of us have had cold sores, so most of us have the herpes virus. There are different kinds. One is the one typically on the mouth. Herpes 2 is the one that's more genital. But there's something called HHV6. Most of us actually has been exposed to this, but for some people it can become problematic. And herpes never goes away, and that's why we get those cold sores every time we're sick or, you know, we're stressed, because they live in our nerve cells. And so unfortunately, those nerve cells can reach our brain. And if I do this test and I see someone's positive, I'll do a trial of antivirals like Valtrex for like 6 months and see if it helps. There are things that can support the immune system like lysine, it's a great amino acid, and AHCC, active hexose correlated compound, is a great way to actually boost the adaptive immune system. And then environmental toxins. This is a very short list. There are hundreds, probably thousands of chemicals that we are exposed to on a regular basis. But look at, cosmetics, for example. Women, we're the most vulnerable because we put more cosmetics on our body, from makeup to nail polish to shampoos to fragrances. And they're saying that the average woman, before she leaves her door in the morning to work or wherever she's going, has about 168 chemicals on her body. And men also have it, but not as much as women. So this is something that's worrisome because our skin is an organ. And so even though we think the skin is a barrier, there's some systemic absorption of these chemicals. Pesticides, which is Roundup, okay? It may make your lawn pretty, you may not have weeds, but ask yourself, what is it doing to yourself internally? And so in 2015, the World Health Organization deemed glyphosate as a probable carcinogen, meaning it's probably cancerous. And if you look at this picture, I find it ironic that this gentleman has to wear a biohazard suit in order to spray the pesticides, yet we're told that it's okay to consume them internally when we buy our produce. So it's a problem. I always say, go for the organic products, don't go for the pimped out products, because it really can cause problems internally, cancer, and even cognitive impairment. So this is, I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but this is the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 list. What the Dirty Dozen lists are the fruits and vegetables that have had the highest pesticide residue. So meaning, on this list right here, these are the produce that you want to prioritize getting organic. And the argument that I hear is that, well, organic is expensive, and sometimes it is. So if you're going to prioritize which products you get organic, do it on the Dirty Dozen list. And of all the products that you see there, strawberries are the worst offender. And we want to clean your environment. So if you have a smartphone, the Environmental Working Group app is really great. It has this cool feature where there's a barcode and you can scan whatever product, like let's say it's a bottle of lotion, and it'll give you a number and let you know if this is toxic for you. I think the number's from 1 to 10, but you're trying to find the product that scores 4 and under. And then the HEPA filter we talked about. Eat organic, refer to that Dirty Dozen list and prioritize those produce as organic. Filter your water. Our water, if you're drinking tap, is really contaminated with hormones, birth control, heavy metals, fluoride, you name it. And so filtering your water is the best idea. Reverse osmosis is probably the best way. And switch your personal care products to cleaner versions, and the same with household chemicals. If you shop at Whole Foods or Sprouts or any of those health food stores, they tend to have clean products. But look at that Environmental Working Group app, and you could take a look and see what are going to be clean versions. Now, if you're in a profession where you're exposed to chemicals, let's say you're in an automotive shop, or you work with chemicals in a factory, in an industry, making sure that there's protective gear in place, like gloves, respirators, because these recurrent daily exposures are cumulative. And then get tested. We can actually test if you have environmental toxins in your system. So that's always an option. So we want to optimize detoxification, meaning we want to push these toxins out. And the term detox, it's not, it's kind of like this fad term where people think it's like a liquid fast or a juice cleanse. No, we have the ability to detox on our own through our liver and some other organs. So we want to enhance it naturally by drinking lots of filtered water, eating foods high in fiber, and sweating. And so what I tell people is that if you want these toxins to come out, they can only come out in 3 ways. You either have to poop it out, you have to pee it out, or you got to sweat it out. And so that's why those are very important. Spend time outside. Get away from all the chemicals in your home. Our couches have flame retardants on them, and that causes some leakage into the air. If you move into a new house, there's some off-gassing from the walls. So going outside and trying to kind of get less exposure is best. Healing your gut if it's leaky, I think we can refer to Dr. Hyman's lecture later on, but this is of utmost importance. You can't detox if you have lots of gut inflammation. We want to support the liver. We want to support the kidneys. Of course, we want to manage stress. And this is where you might want to work with a functional medicine doctor to help with detoxification. So reduce your toxins in your life, and that's environment, and that's food, and that's even people. So let's talk about supplements real quick. Now, supplements is very individualized, and they're called supplements because they're supposed to supplement, not replace, good nutrition, good lifestyle factors. They're more supportive, and so if there are deficiencies, they're definitely appropriate to utilize. And you can even use them therapeutically like a medication. So the goal of supplements when we're talking about cognitive health is to reduce inflammation, to optimize nutrients, to boost the immune system. We want to enhance absorption and digestion. We want to bind toxins. We want to enhance detoxification and repair damaged tissue. Now, I will say that, I'm going to suggest supplements and dosages. Please do not start anything without consulting with your physician. Just as a reference, I know this will be recorded. Here's some great nutraceuticals to help reduce inflammation. So of course, if we see chronic inflammation, we want to determine the cause. We don't want to do a Band-Aid approach and treat something like modern medicine does. So things like fish oil, SPMs are pro-resolving mediators, curcumin, which we know is from turmeric, amazing anti-inflammatory. Boswellia, I love Boswellia, especially for joint inflammation or rheumatoid, those kinds of things, or osteoarthritis. Ginger is a great anti-inflammatory. It really helps even with digestion. And we want to avoid those quote unquote anti-inflammatory medications, which really cause more inflammation. And then we want supplements that will enhance our insulin sensitivity. There's that lock and key. We want the cell to answer to insulin knocking on the door, right? So I'm going to get into the dietary aspect, which is the KetoFlex diet. Now, I'll go back to that in later slides, but this is something we'll touch upon. The diet is going to be incredibly important for insulin sensitivity. Diet and lifestyle are priority. But here's some nutraceuticals you can think about. Berberine enhances that insulin sensitivity. Zinc, alpha-lipoic acid is also an antioxidant, which really helps lower blood sugar, and chromium picolinate. We want to enhance that neurotrophic support. So whole coffee fruit extract actually increases that BDNF we talked about earlier. 7,8-hydroxyflavone, another one, it's an antioxidant. Acetyl L-carnitine helps increase nerve growth factor, and so does hericium or lion's mane. And we want to enhance detoxification. So we know about probiotics. I'm sure we've seen them everywhere in the store. But we think about prebiotics, and prebiotics actually are food for the probiotics. And of course, I mentioned that we need that gut health to optimize detoxification. Glutathione is the master antioxidant of our body. And when we think of detox, there are 5 pathways that occur in our liver for detoxification. Glutathione is one of them. N-acetylcysteine is a precursor to glutathione, so that can help. Milk thistle really helps support the liver. Gotu kola, which is good for the kidneys. So remember, we need to pee it out, poop it out, or sweat it out. And then for our patients with identifiable toxicity, we use binders like charcoal and clay, chlorella, and those things to bind the toxin and eliminate them. Now, enhancing mitochondrial function, mitochondria, if you've never heard of it, is the power cell battery to our whole body. It is what provides all the energy. And some can argue that Alzheimer's is a mitochondrial disease. So mitochondria get best supported with antioxidants. So CoQ10, PQQ, nicotinamide, resveratrol, and vitamin C. And to go back to CoQ10, a lot of seniors are on statin drugs for their cholesterol. And so it's very wise to supplement with CoQ10 if you're on a statin drug. And enhancing gut function, I know Dr. Hyman will probably talk about this, but we want things to move. So digestive enzymes, as we get older, we don't make enough stomach acid like we used to. It naturally declines with age. So it's nice to support enzymes and even betaine hydrochloric acid with each meal, because we need an optimal stomach pH in order to digest our food and extract the nutrients it needs for support. And then if there are infections in the gut, like yeast overgrowth or even parasites or bad bacteria, we can use antimicrobial herbals that work really well. And I use these all the time. And we want to heal the gut. We want to heal that lining of the gut that could be leaky. So these are like glutamine and licorice and slippery elm are very, very good. We want to enhance vascularization. So beetroot powder is great. It increases nitric oxide. L-citrulline makes nitric oxide, great product. There's a brand called Neo 40, is something you can look into. L-arginine and vinpocetine are all products that help increase that nitric oxide, which helps dilate blood vessels and brings more blood to the brain. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is nutrition. You can see in big red letters that it is the most important part. And I want to emphasize, you can exercise all day long, you can take supplements all day long, but if you don't have your nutrition in order, you're not going to be successful. And so this is the foundation. And so I left that one last because it's so important. But the nutrition, the food that we eat, which food is medicine, needs to be anti-inflammatory. It needs to be low in sugar. It needs to be filled with nutrients, and it needs to be clean and unprocessed. So again, we're primal creatures. Our genes haven't changed, but our environment has terribly changed, and we're not adapting. We're just getting sicker and sicker. A lot of it is diet driven. If you think about the epidemic in our country with diabetes, diet. If it's hypertension, diet. If it's cholesterol, diet. And I would argue that even with Alzheimer's is diet. So the standard American diet, which stands for SAD, because it's a SAD diet, is very processed. It's full of artificial chemicals, high and refined carbohydrates, and we don't eat enough fruits and vegetables, right? We just don't. So what I want to introduce to you is what Dr. Bresson created is the Keto Flex diet, and what I'll explain what that means. So our brain runs on two different kinds of fuel, sugar or glucose and ketones. Now, because we live in America and we have food accessible in any moment, at any time, we can eat whenever we want. And so for the most part, we've been running on sugar. We've not entered a state of ketosis. Our ancestors who had to hunt for their food, they had to, dig for their food, fish, they went through days, hours, and days without food. So that metabolic state of ketosis is what happens. And that's protective. It's actually a better fuel for our body and our brain. It makes us less hungry. And that's what allowed our ancestors to survive, was that state of ketosis. So by doing the KetoFlex diet, you're trying to have metabolic flexibility, meaning you're switching from glucose to ketosis back and forth, and that's metabolic efficiency. Now, the 12-3 refers to the amount of time that you should spend fasting. So fasting is abstaining from food. And 12 hours sounds like a lot, but if you think about it, imagine having dinner at 6 p.m. and then having breakfast 6 a.m. There's 12 hours right there. So most of that time is going to be spent in sleep. And you can vary the time of fasting from 12 hours. I've seen as much as 24 hours. So it's going to be person dependent. And you want to leave at least 3 hours before your last meal to bedtime. That is always best. And here's the KetoFlex food pyramid. Definitely different from the USDA's food pyramid. You can imagine that it's no longer filled with carbohydrates as the majority. So we put fasting as the main priority, then non-starchy vegetables, and then we move up to starchy vegetables, and then we move up to good quality proteins, and then the rare indulgences like chocolate and wine and those kinds of things. But here's the fuel. We can run both on sugar and fat. And the Keto Flex, we're going to try to run predominantly on ketones, which is the fat. And if you're looking at the macros for American diet and a ketogenic diet, you'll see on the right that Americans eat 50% of their diet in carbohydrates. No wonder we have a diabetic epidemic. But going over to a ketogenic diet, it's 70% fat. And that sounds completely against all the advice we've been given for decades about low fat, but we're in this epidemic because we sacrifice fat and then we end up consuming more carbohydrates. And so the low fat propaganda started to hurt most Americans. And also cardiologists are always discouraging the consumption of fats. The type of fat matters. So I'll explain that in a little bit. But why Keto Flex is important for cognition? Because it literally focuses on the very mechanisms that contribute to cognitive decline. All the things that we just talked about: reducing inflammation, creating that insulin sensitivity, providing the materials for neuron support, protecting against nutrient deficiencies, promoting detoxification, and increasing circulation. So it literally addresses all those factors that we talked about. And so the diet is so important. And like I mentioned before, you need to incorporate other modalities, that all those pieces of the pie together to create the best metabolic health. And to go back to the fats, the type of fats matter. So when we think of a Keto Flex diet, people think, is this an Atkins, where you're eating steak and butter all day? Absolutely not. That's the wrong kind of fat. We want to focus on plant-based fats like avocados and olive oils, coconut oil, nuts and seeds, fatty fish. Clarified butter and ghee is great in moderation, and good quality meats. A lot of our meats are farm-raised. They're injected with hormones. They're fed a grain, mold-infested lot, and we need good quality meat if we're going to consume meat. And the vegetables. If there was one takeaway, would be consume more vegetables, because this is where a lot of us fall short. And this is the list of vegetables that has the best and the most nutrient-dense properties. So on the left, the leafy greens, and these are all leafy greens. You can find them in any grocery store, even year-round. And on the right, the cruciferous vegetables. And these are vegetables that are high in sulfur. And sulfur is one of those 5 pathways involved in detoxification of the liver. So these are your onions and cabbage and broccoli. And try to fill your plate 50 to 75%, fill it with vegetables, okay? You want to eat the rainbow. If you look at this beautiful picture, you see all the different colors of vegetables. The color is phytonutrients, antioxidants. They all have their unique property that your brain thrives on. And food is information. It is literally the most powerful tool to change your health. And your medicine is at the tip of your fork. So please remember that. So I'm going to share some final thoughts. So number 1, always identify your risk factors. Try to identify those 36 holes in the roof, like Dr. Bredesen says. We want to optimize metabolic parameters, create lifestyle changes, optimize sleep, optimize oxygenation, detoxify your life. And lastly, if you'd like to work with a certified Bredesen practitioner like myself, please let us know. The takeaway here is, do not wait for symptoms to occur to be proactive about your cognition. There's so much we can do from a preventative point of view, and we really try our best to work with all kinds of cognitive impairment, from mild to moderate to advanced. So I want to share with you our neurocognitive assessment. We do this quite a bit in our office. We do a thorough intake. We generate a recode report. We work with Dr. Bredesen's program, which is Apollo Health. And this report here is able to identify, based on labs and based on history, the different subtypes that we just talked about. And then you'll see me here. This is our brain mapping device. We wear a cap, and it's basically those little white things are electrodes, and we gel up the cap and we measure brain waves, we measure brain activity, we measure processing speed, processing our speed latency. And so we really try to put this comprehensive package together because we're looking at cognition in different aspects. So our neurocognitive assessment, full consultation, blood testing, that recode report I talked about, we use a MoCA test. You may have seen it before, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test. CNS Vital Signs is an online program that we use to get a baseline of their performance. So it looks at, you know, speed, agility, language, those kinds of things. And so there are subjective measures where people say, well, I think I have a problem. I keep losing my car keys. And then we can measure them objectively. What is their brain telling us? And then EVOX, that EEG, was that picture I showed you about the cap. And then we come up with a comprehensive plan. It is very complex, but doable. And like I said, we work with so many different patients. The earlier, the better, the best chance for success. And we've seen such great success in our patients, reversal of their cognitive impairment. Some are so far off, you know, we can't reverse them 100%, but we can improve their quality of life if that means they're more verbal, or they're more sociable, or they're able to, you know, not get lost like they used to. And it's different for different people, but there is hope. So I want to thank everyone for your time and attention. Thank you, Dale, for having me here today. This is our clinic. Here's our phone number and our email. If you guys want to contact us, feel free. I'm happy to answer questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Apostol. I appreciate it. I was looking, and I didn't mention this ahead of time to everybody. Well, I may have mentioned it someplace. But if you got questions, you can either write them in the chat. Judy just made a comment, this is excellent, thank you. So we appreciate that. Or there's a Q&A box also. So I didn't see any in there right now, but Dr. Apostol, this is really good information. In fact, I was texting with a friend of mine down the street who's also watching it, and she was really impressed with all the information that you had today. You know, this is, you know, I touched on some of these things, but not in the detail that you have. And this is exactly the kind of information that we need our Brazoria County residents, our community people to learn about. And that's why I've been working to pivot what we do with the Alzheimer's Awareness Project toward this kind of activity, okay? Because what we want people to do is to not get dementia symptoms, okay? And while it's not a panacea, a cure-all thing, there are things you can do, and all these things you talked about are things you can do to lessen your possibility of developing dementia symptoms. And in fact, these things, if you have some already, you can actually come back from them. Okay. So again, it's not a cure-all. It's not, well, this is the magic bullet, blah, 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 blah. But these are things you can do, and this is how we're going to do this. Okay, so this is from me, actually. One of the persons asked if we could get a copy of your presentation. Now, the presentation, I'm recording this, so it'll be here again. I didn't ask you, Dr. Apostol, to send me a copy of that. Can
Well,
you?
I definitely can.
Okay, so,
Yep.
yeah, okay, so if you'll do that, so then to answer this question, the answer is going to be when I get that from her, then I will, because I have everybody's email address, okay? Because when you registered, you had to register with an email address. So I know who you are. I know where you live, okay? So I can put that out to you. In fact, I may actually post that on my website so you can download it or something. I haven't decided yet, but yes. So thank you. Send that. Okay, we got one question here. Okay, so you were looking at foods and you were mentioning the good and the bad and the ugly and all that other good stuff. One of our participants asked, why not peanuts? She didn't see peanuts written there anywhere.
That's right. So even though nuts and seeds are really great, they're high in omega-3s, the problem with peanuts is that they're high in omega-6s. And omega-6 is very inflammatory. And so as since most of us eat the standard American diet, we have a major imbalance between having too much omega-6s and not enough omega-3s. And so peanuts is not typically a great source for that. So if we're going to consume nuts, the best ones would be almonds and walnuts, Brazil nuts, those kinds of things.
Okay, good. Yeah, in fact, I've got like 3 bags of almonds out there, and so if I need to snack on something, that's what I'm after. So I've never, I used to like, this was a long time ago, I used to like eat cashews. Okay, so are they in the peanuts category?
Yeah. No, they're not. They're actually, the cashews are great for you, yes.
Oh, are they? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna start eating those again.
Yes.
Because I like those too, but I really love almonds, and so that's worked out really well. The other thing, I guess I'll just say real quick. And another question. Here we go. All right, here's a question. Now, this might be answered in Dr. Hyman's YouTube video, but she wants to know, how do we know if we have leaky gut?
That's a great question. It's not a black and white answer, but for the most part, when we're looking at leaky gut, it's also called intestinal permeability, is that we're looking at first, number one, symptoms, gut symptoms. And then what we're looking to is that some people who we see have one of those symptoms, I would say, is food sensitivities. And so if we find someone who is sensitive to just so many different food groups, that's a big clue of a leaky gut. I would argue that most of us probably have some degree of leaky gut, because stress can cause leaky gut. Poor sleep can cause leaky gut, diet, nutrition. And so you don't need fancy testing if you're wanting to work on gut health, but the best thing to do is start with diet and make sure that you're not introducing inflammatory foods in the diet. There are testing that you can do lab-wise if you're looking. There's a mannitol, it's like a breath test that you can do. You can also do a stool test where you're looking at your microbiome. So you're seeing if there's inflammation in the gut, if there's an overgrowth of bad bacteria, if there's not enough of the good guys. You can look at parasites, even viruses and fungi. That's more of the, it's more expensive route. But some people can just assume there's some degree of leaky gut. And so if you're one of those people that are reactive to big proteins like gluten and dairy, there's likely some leakiness going on. Or if you have skin issues like eczema, that's another clue. Autoimmune disease very much linked with leaky gut, and even psychiatric like depression and anxiety. So and that's why that answer is not black and white, because it can look very different in different people. So that's where you work with a practitioner. For example, with functional medicine, we're very time oriented. We spend a lot of time with our patients, and we get a very detailed history, because we're not just looking at diet, we're looking at sleep and lifestyle factors. Medications can contribute to leaky gut. So we're trying to take all that information and their symptoms and trying to discern whether this is a major problem or not.
Okay, good. Appreciate that. One other question, a comment was, she says, you need some sugar. Does that mean real sugar or sugar substitute?
In terms of sugar for the brain, is that the question?
Well, it might be, because you did, you mentioned, the brain runs on sugar, it runs on
Correct.
ketones.
Correct.
Okay?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think this person is probably thinking, well, does that mean if we are going to use sugar, do we use real sugar or sugar substitute?
When I say sugar as fuel, this is the sugar which is called glycogen that's stored in our muscles and our liver. So consuming, when we say the word sugar, it really means carbohydrates. So not like sweet sugar, but more of any carbohydrates. Fruit would be a carbohydrate, honey, grains, those kinds of things. And so when we consume those foods, our body takes that sugar and it puts it as storage in our liver called glycogen and muscle. And glycogen storage capacity is about 48 hours. And so if you ever heard about those, marathon runners and they hit that quote unquote wall, that's because they run out of glycogen. And so the glycogen is there for protection in those times where we may not be able to find food. And so what our body does is that, let's say we're hunting for food, it's been 24 hours, we haven't eaten, our body starts releasing that glycogen. And since it's a storage, it will run out at some point. And then once that runs out, then we switch to ketones. And that's where our body starts burning fat for fuel. So ketones come from actual fat burning.
Right.
Yes. So
Okay.
we adapt. I mean, we're supposed to bounce between glucose and ketones for fuel.
Right. Okay. And I'm not sure about the question. She hasn't responded in another spot, but this might be, okay, so when I'm having my iced tea, should I put sugar or sugar substitute? And I think the answer is anything sugar-wise that doesn't come from the places you talked about is added sugar.
Correct.
Which is a no, no, no.
Big time. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So it doesn't matter if it's real sugar or sugar substitute, don't do it.
And I would say for sugar substitutes, if you're wanting that sweet flavor, you can do stevia, very safe, or monk fruit, but stay away from those chemically laden, equals and sweet and lows, and stay far, far away from them.
Yeah, okay. One other question here. They want to know, so you talked about what you do at the clinic and the recode process and your assessment, all that stuff. The question was, is that program covered by any kind of medical insurance?
Unfortunately, not. The only thing that could be covered is if we order a brain MRI, that is usually covered by Medicare. And just a brief thing on the insurance issue is that we have tried to work with insurance companies, and unfortunately, they do not see this program as standard of care.
Right.
And so they're happy to pay for things like Aricept and Namenda, but they're not willing to pay for prevention, dietary counseling, lifestyle intervention. I wish that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, me too. Okay. Yeah, so the lady wrote back, she said, okay, that's what she needed to know. Don't put the stuff in her teeth.
Right.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's really unfortunate that the assessments you do via functional medicine aren't accepted, I guess, by the insurance company or the medical community in general, and which is really, really unfortunate because, it makes so much, this is just me talking, it makes so much more sense to me that if you could find out what the root cause of your problem is, instead of throwing pills at it, you would be so much better off. Okay.
That's right.
And that's what functional medicine does. And quite frankly, there are very few clinics in in fact, in Southern Brazoria County, there aren't any. Okay. The closest one, I think, is in Pearland, which is in Brazoria County, but it's close to Houston. And there are a few in Houston. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
But there's nothing down here by us. And that's exactly right. So that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. I will say that what we do is with some of our patients who try to get insurance reimbursement, we create a super bill, and they can take that to their insurance and try to get some sort of reimbursement. It's not guaranteed, but at least it's better than nothing.
Okay.
And also on the topic of the functional medicine clinics, there's a lot of telemedicine. I do telemedicine, so you don't have to be physically present in order to see a functional medicine provider.
Oh, okay. Okay. So if they went to your website, the telemedicine connection is there, or some way to. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Yes.
Good. All right. Great. Okay. All right. I don't see any other questions. Again, thank you ever so much for doing this. Lots of good information. I will share your presentation when I get it. Like I said, I'm recording this so people can watch it. It'll be posted on our website and all of that. So that's really good. So,
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you ever so much, and I appreciate it. Okay, so what we're going to do now, is I was going to take a break, so if you needed to go to the bathroom or something, and we're a little bit down the line here, but I think what I might do, I may still do that if you need to do something. What I'm going to do is, in case you didn't get in at 10:30, I'm going to share the videos, just one after another, from our community partners. And then when I get done with that, I will come back and we'll start Dr. Hyman's YouTube video. So what was that, 4, 5, 6? So probably 10 minutes. So if you saw the things before, you can take a 10-minute break. If you didn't, and you came in after we got started, then here's our community partners who made some videos about their services. Okay, and I'm going to start again with Shelley at Care Builders.
Hi there, how is everyone doing out there? Oh, yeah, this mask, we're in a different time these days, but since I'm in here by myself, I'm gonna take it off so that y'all can hear me better. My name is Shelley Crosby, and I am the owner and administrator of Care Builders at Home here in Lake Jackson. And we do non-medical in-home care for senior citizens and handicapped adults. We go in and help with things like bathing, dressing, light housekeeping, meal preparation, transportation, medication reminders, go shopping for you, or simply just be there for companionship if that's what you need. All of our people are our employees. They're not contract service, so we pay all of our employees taxes, insurance, and we bond them. That keeps you from having to do that. A lot of people don't know that if you use a contract worker or somebody as private, you do have to pay 7.65% of their payroll tax to the IRS in order for them to get credit with the IRS and for you to get credit for paying it as well. Also, we do background checks, which is a local, state, and federal background check. We do drug screens. We do a 12-panel drug screen. We CPR certify and TB test all of our caregivers, and they're also trained and tested on their skills. So you're getting a good quality caregiver when we come in. We are very aware of the current COVID situation, and we are following all the CDC guidelines that are being set before us, and we have not had any of our caregivers or our clients come down with the virus as of now. I won't say that won't happen because I don't know what the future holds, but we are doing everything the CDC is telling us in order to not have that happen. We have a strong administrative staff, and one of us is on call 24/7. So you never get an answering machine when you call us. One of us will pick it up. I always say, if you get an answering machine, we might have stepped away to the potty for a second, but we'll get right back to you. So don't worry about having to wait for somebody to call you back. We'll be right back with you if you call. We're locally owned and operated. I am the owner and I've been here all my life, know lots of people. We have a local office. All of our girls are from the local area. So you know that somebody's not having to drive from Houston or wherever it is to get to you. They're going to be there quickly. And you set the time. It's not we just show up whenever we feel like it. You tell us when you want us to be there and what you want us to do. We take private pay, we take long-term care insurance, and we also take the Veterans Aid and Attendance Program, and we have a company that I personally pay to help us with the procedure of getting you set up on Veterans Aid and Attendance benefits. And this is for not only the veteran, but also their surviving spouse. So if you were married to a veteran and he or she has since passed away, then you are able to still get that benefit if you have the qualifications, which means you need help with at least 2 activities of daily living. And if your income is within the guidelines that they set. But we help you with all of that, and it doesn't cost you anything. We do the work. So we hope that if you have a need for somebody to come in and do some of the simple things for you that might be a little more difficult for you these days, you give Care Builders at Home a call. Our number is 979-258-6728. And you can also look us up on the web at carebuildersathome.lakejackson.com. God bless you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Okay, and let's go to Alvin Pharmacy and play that one. And it's right here.
Welcome to our Care Pharmacy, where our mission is about helping our customer feel better and live longer. So we're going to take you behind the scene in our Care Pharmacy. Please follow us. We have lots of mask selections. We have surgical masks. We have KN95. We have some hand sanitizer. And then we also have CBD and NANDA, which is our high-end CBD products that all the warranties come with it. And we have original products, and then we have some other vitamins that are unique. For example, diabetes RX support. These are to be taken when you're diabetic and you're taking a diabetic medication such as metformin, because it helps to replenish the vitamins that being depleted by your body. So another service that we offer here at Care Pharmacy is compounding. So what it is it's a custom-made medication that is just tailored to what you need. For example, we have things ranging from pain medication to hormones, or to beauty supplies like scar, cream, or hair growth.
Hi there, Savannah from Alvin Care Pharmacy. So here at the pharmacy, we have a program for our patients that are on, say, multiple medications taking at different times during the day. So it's called dispel or blister packaging. So this is a free service that our pharmacy actually offers to all of our patients on multiple medications. So what they would do is they would just bring in all the meds that they're currently on, what time they're taking it at, say they're taking it in the morning or in the evening or any time in between, and we'll go ahead and put it together in a blister pack for them. So I have several examples here. This is kind of what it looks like. And so yeah, that's just one of the many services that we offer here.
Okay, so that's our pals at Alvin Pharmacy. And now we'll hear from Help Incorporated. And this one. Here we go. All right, share the screen.
Hi, I'm Fred Ortiz from Help Inc. Many times people ask me what it is that Help Inc. does. There are many different terms for what we do, in-home care and senior care being two of the most common. We prefer to call our service compassionate companion care. We seek to enhance, sustain, and support clients at every stage of life. This includes a long list of services, some of which include cooking, light housework, coordinating care with home health, transportation, errands, personal assistance, laundry, dishes, or simply being there for your loved one when you can't. We provide care when and where you need it, from helping a mother with her newborn to providing assistance with elderly hospice patients, and at every stage of life in between. We have helped our clients by providing affordable, compassionate companion care for over 20 years. We'd love to help you too. Contact us today.
All right, and then finally we want to hear from Tracy at Sweeney Community Hospital. So let's do that.
Hello, it's Tracy Copeland. I work with Sweeney Community Hospital, and I'm very proud to be able to talk with you guys today about my thoughts and take on the Gathering Place, as well as the really neat and exciting partnership that we have with the Gathering Place. So thank you for letting me take time to talk about this. First, let me start off with what all I am in, that a largely volunteer organization could successfully set up a meeting as good and as big as this one. That speaks volumes for TGP. So having known several people who I love very much, who volunteered with the organization and do currently, it was clear early on that the Gathering Place was going to have a great and positive impact on our community. The thought of people, volunteers no less, taking time to spend hours with those suffering with this terrible disease shows a depth of volume and care rarely seen in other organizations. I've always said something that some might find crass, and I apologize if you do. It's easy to fall in love with a baby or a puppy or a kitten and then spend time volunteering for them and with them. But to love our seniors like the people who serve at TGP is a gift to all of those who are currently serving their families as caregivers. These communities could not be the same without that. Those being served, including your younger patients, in my opinion, they are still the greatest generation, no matter what kind of labels we try to put on people that have to be in a box. These are great, great people, and it just makes me very happy that there are so many of you who will take care of them. Without a doubt, they're caregivers of Alzheimer's patients should be lauded. Those people who live with that person, who take care of that person, they are on the front lines for each of those for whom they care. The free moments that the Gathering Place allows these caregivers has got to be invaluable to them, and I'm certain it is. You guys are all true champions, whether you're a caregiver to a person at home or you are there at the Gathering Place. I can't ever say enough about it. So when it comes to the partnership that Sweeney Hospital has with TGP, I wish I could say it was my idea. It wasn't. Dale and Audrey actually approached our senior counseling team and our assisted living leadership team. And I'm blessed to be able to say that I get to be part of that. And as far as I know, being the first west of the Brazos organization to work so closely with TGP, I'm very proud of that. But it provided some challenges, but nothing that team couldn't overcome. In fact, it's just been smooth sailing, not because of us, more so that the Gathering Place employees and volunteers. So I close with a message to caregivers and to the Gathering Place volunteers and to the Gathering Place employees, thank you and God bless you for what you're doing. You're changing lives and you're making lives more livable. Thanks for giving me this time.
All right. So we are going to move on now to our next presentation, that last one for today. This is a YouTube video, and this is from Dr. Mark Hyman. And let me just tell you a little bit about Dr. Mark Hyman. He's leading a health revolution, one that's revolved around using food as medicine to support longevity, energy, mental clarity, happiness, and so much more. He is a practicing family physician and internationally recognized leader, speaker, educator, and advocate in the field of functional medicine. He's the founder and director of the Ultra Wellness Center. He's the head of strategy and innovation of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine, and a 13-time New York Times best-selling author and board president for clinical affairs for the Institute of Functional Medicine. He's also the host of one of the leading health podcasts. It's called The Doctor's Pharmacy, F-A-R-M-A-C-Y, not a P-H. He's a regular medical contributor on several television shows and networks. And he also is on Facebook all the time. So you may see him there. He posts several things every day about things. So what we're going to do is I am going to share my desktop in a second, and we're going to show his video, and it's called "Why Fixing the Gut is the Key to Healing Chronic Disease." Okay, and there was a question about how do we know if we have a leaky gut, and it was a good conversation. And so I am going to let me see if I can see it from here before I start it. There it is right there. Okay, so I'm going to start it here, and it's about an hour, and I'll be hiding in the corner over here. So, and since this is a YouTube video, then he's not here, so he can't answer any questions. But if you have questions for him, you can always reach out to him because he is out there, like I said, on Facebook and things like that. So anyway, let's see what he has to say.
Most of your immune system is in your gut.
Yeah.
So when you disrupt that ecosystem, that rainforest inside of you, you are disrupting the immune system.
Welcome to the Doctor's Pharmacy. I'm Dr. Mark Hyman, and that's Pharmacy with an F, F-A-R-M-A-C-Y, a place for conversations that matter. And if you've struggled with any chronic illness, this is the conversation you need to listen to because it's with one of the leading experts in the world on how to deal with chronic disease, which is my colleague here at the Ultra Wellness Center, Dr. Todd Lapine. Now, Todd and I go way back. In fact, Todd knew about functional medicine before I even heard about it, way back at Canyon Ranch in the 1990s. That's right, 1990s. We are old, but we look young. And he was way ahead of the curve, and he still is. He's still really one of the most brilliant minds in functional medicine. He teaches everywhere. He's certified by the Institute for Functional Medicine in functional medicine, obviously. He worked with me at Canyon Ranch for 10 years, and now he's worked here for a decade at the Ultra Wellness Center. And collectively, we have literally probably 5 decades worth of experience in functional medicine between the two of us, seeing so many thousands of patients who struggled for so long with so many issues. When they finally get here, they find there's a new way of thinking about disease, and it gives them an opportunity to actually get healthy again. And we're just so grateful to be able to have you here at the Ultra Wellness Center and able to do the work we do. You really help work on some of the most leading edge concepts in medicine around biodetoxification, systemic inflammation, GI health, neurobiology of mood and cognitive disorders. He's given lectures all around the world at age management conferences, at American College for the Advancement of Medicine. He's taught at the University of Miami Integrated Medicine Conference at Crepallo. And he's on the Scientific Advisory Board of Designs for Health and consults with Diagnostic Solutions Lab. And he's very active. He skis, he kayaks, he hikes, he camps, he golfs. He loves the Berkshires. Yeah, he's just been an extraordinary addition to our center. So welcome, Dr. Todd Lepine.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. That's really nice.
Okay, so you start off your career working as a resident at a VA hospital.
Yes.
And
best learning experience ever.
Yeah, pretty much. You see everything. And you get to do everything.
Exactly.
And,
you've been there, you know.
And I have. Well, I have. And you had this patient who has quite a problem that gives a lot of insight into functional medicine, which is called hepatic encephalopathy, which in English means that when your liver fails, you can't detoxify, and all your normal metabolic toxins makes you delirious and can even put you in a coma and gives you all these brain symptoms. So what happened when you treated him with the typical treatment? And tell us what that is, because it's kind of an unusual treatment for a brain problem.
Right, exactly. So yeah, so the story is I was a resident and I was, wet behind the ears, and I had a patient at the VA, and a lot of patients at the VA, some of them had alcohol and tobacco abuse, and he had liver failure. And he came in a coma with hepatic encephalopathy.
By the way, just to the side there, it used to be the most common source of liver failure was alcohol.
Yeah.
Now it's sugar.
Yeah, right.
Which is a big reason for liver transplants.
Right.
Anyway, keep going. Sorry, I had to interrupt you now.
Yeah. So anyway, so he comes in completely in a coma. I mean, he could stick a pin in him and he wouldn't move. And so we worked him up, and I had to sort of learn about hepatic encephalopathy because I didn't really know what it was. And so we treated him, and I found out that it was related to his liver not being able to detoxify, and he had also had a high protein meal intake, and the protein gets digested by the gut bacteria, and all the blood from the liver all the blood from the gut has to get filtered through the liver before it goes into systemic circulation. So what we did with him is we basically treated him with nothing by mouth. We gave him antibiotics. I believe it was neomycin.
And you stopped feeding the bad bacteria. Producing the toxins.
Yeah, exactly. So we cleaned out the food for the bad bacteria in the gut. We sort of gave his gut a rest. Gave him antibiotics and neomycin intravenously. Also gave him laxatives, specifically lactulose at the time. I don't know if you've
lactulose and neomycin orally though. Don't you give the neomycin orally?
I'm trying. It might have been orally. It might have been orally. You're right. It could very well have been orally. So we gave him lactulose, and we also actually, believe it or not, gave him probiotics. And within 24 hours, this guy who was in a complete coma completely woke up, just like the proverbial Lazarus. And it was amazing to me. So I've been looking at it and I'm saying,
that'll wake you up.
Exactly. That'll wake you up. And I said, this guy woke up from the dead. And I was like, it actually left an indelible impression on my experience as a physician, saying there is a huge connection between the gut and the brain. And then that has led me on the quest that I've gone on for all these years, and seeing the connection, how our internal ecosystem, the microbiome, and the food that we eat and the food that we feed the bugs affects our health in good ways or bad ways.
Yeah, it's so true. And I remember learning about the disease, and I was like, how come doctors don't connect the dots with the gut and everything else that goes wrong in the body?
Right.
Because the treatment for this coma that's caused by liver failure is essentially giving antibiotics that aren't absorbed. You kill all the bugs in the gut that are producing these toxins that make them crazy or make them in a coma.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you give them a lot of laxatives to make them poop everything out.
Yep.
And that's just kind of a miracle happens, right?
Yeah, it was a miracle.
Wake up from the dead.
Exactly, wake up from the dead, exactly.
And that led you to kind of understand the interconnectedness of everything.
Right. And then, when we see patients all the time, a lot of patients come into us and say, Doc, I've got brain fog. That is low grade,
you're not in a coma, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, you're a zombie. I call it a zombie. You're living dead. You're walking around, but you're not really there. Your brain is being affected by some of these chemicals, and there's a lot of different chemicals that are produced by gut bacteria. Some of them are putrescine and cadaverine. You know what cadaverine is? You don't want a whole lot of cadaverine unless you're a cadaver.
That's right.
Right.
Those sound like terrible things. Putrescine and cadaverine. Those are the toxins that get released from bad digestion, right?
Yeah, and that, well, even one of the compounds that we measure now in the office here is TMAO, trimethylamine oxide. It's the same type of bacterial byproduct of metabolism of certain food products. So certain bacteria will eat certain foods and produce these compounds which have psychoactive properties or inflammatory properties. Because TMAO is one of the risk factors for heart disease.
So one of the central ideas of functional medicine is you start with the gut.
Yeah.
It's almost what you start with anybody who's got anything, which is kind of a weird thing because like, how can you treat everything with one thing? But it actually is a foundation of our health. And when our microbiome is out of balance, it leads to a whole host of problems, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And the big thing that I don't treat children with autism, but the biggest thing that I think that is affecting this country is the microbiome that we're not inheriting from our mothers.
Yeah.
Because what happens so often now is that when mothers go into the hospital, they're getting antibiotics beforehand. Half of them, 40%, 50% are getting C-sections. So we are destroying our...
And then we don't breastfeed.
Don't breastfeed, exactly.
Then we give kids antibiotics.
They give antibiotics and vaccinations on day one, for hepatitis B. And this microbiome that we have literally inherited from generation to generation, because it's something that's really passed down from the mothers to the daughters to the granddaughters, is being lost. And the loss specifically of Bifidobacterium infantis. It's actually been I think it was in the New York Times that it was talking about this loss of this, one of many beneficial bacteria that we are losing as part of the human species. And it's affecting our whole health.
So let's back up a little bit and talk about this whole thing of the microbiome. Because we started with functional medicine, there wasn't the word microbiome, but we still focused on normalizing the gut function. We talked about the 4R program, which is a restoration program for the gut and how that can help so many different diseases. But what is the microbiome? Why is it important? What does it do? I mean, we thought it was just poop, and now it's like basically the holy grail for figuring everything out.
Yeah, so it's gold. It's gold, and actually, and
brown gold
is brown gold, right? so down in Boston, so the microbiome is the sum total of all the organisms that we have and carry around inside of us, and that also can include viruses. It can also include fungi, and it's not necessarily, we call it good and bad, but it depends really upon the situation. Because, like for example, all of us carry around C. difficile bacteria. C. difficile bacteria, when you take an antibiotic, it'll wipe out some of the good bacteria, and then the bad guys, if you will, they'll sort of start to overgrow, and then they can produce toxins. So
that happened to me, and I almost died from it.
Exactly. Exactly. And the treatment of choice for that is, if you have a really bad case, the treatment of choice is a stool transplant, which is like an organ transplant. And the interesting thing is that one of the companies that does this is Open Biome in Boston, which I think you're aware of, and they use freeze-dried stool. And that is one of the cures, literally, for a really messed up gut microbiome. Because if
you can even get poop pills now.
Poop pills, yeah, crapsules.
Crapsules,
right? Crapsules.
I've never heard that. That's a good one. How many crapsules do you take?
Right, and what it is, and I always make analogies because that's how patients understand things. It's sort of like, the ecosystem of the microbiome inside the body is like a rainforest. And at some point, some people's ecosystems are so disturbed and so messed up that it's like napalm has hit your rainforest.
It's like a corn monocrop.
Yeah, and so what you need to do is you need to repopulate the microbiome. Yeah, right. Yeah, we're going to get a little puns here. Yeah, we need to repopulate the microbiome. And you can't do that just with probiotics, although we use probiotics and we use prebiotics and we use those together. We call them symbiotics. And those are oftentimes very helpful. But for the really sick people who have things like refractory C. diff, stool transplant is the #1 treatment.
Yeah, interesting. So you've got this whole ecosystem bacteria. It's been disturbed by all these reasons you talked about: C-sections, antibiotic use, lack of breastfeeding, and so on. And our diet also plays a huge role in the growth of good or bad bacteria. So you can feed it certain things and it makes it worse, and other things and it makes it better. So talk about that.
Yeah, so I always tell patients that when you're eating food, you want to be choosing your food, not just for you, what you like. the things that are pleasurable for you, but you also want to be feeding the good bacteria. And we talked earlier about this Akkermansia mucinophilia. That's a specific bacteria that is in the body and that you want to have on high levels. And when we do the testing, we can actually determine, do you have high levels of it, or do you have low levels, or do you have no levels, or very low levels? And there are certain foods which you can incorporate into your diet, things like pomegranate and maca and acacia fiber, cranberries and things like that. These are foods which are basically prebiotics. And when you incorporate them into your diet, it's like putting Miracle-Gro on that garden. They start to flourish, they start to take over, and they help balance out the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest advances in our thinking about gut. We just give probiotics and that'll fix it. But you're giving like 50 billion is a lot, right? But you have 100 trillion bacteria. Yeah. So it's like a drop in the ocean.
Exactly.
And one of the big insights I had was actually from an experience I had last year where I developed colitis. It's a long story, but I had been sick from mold, and I've told that story, and I had a recurrence of my gut because I had the C. diff, and that was kind of really messed me up. And I checked my stool and I had really low levels of this Akkermansia, which has been linked to autoimmune disease, been linked to poor response to immunotherapy for cancer. It's been linked to cardiometabolic disease and diabetes. And I'm like, whoa, this is not good. So I started to research it and created this cocktail of cranberry, pomegranate, green tea, acacia fiber, some probiotics, other prebiotics. And I took it, and it literally within 3 weeks, I went from full-blown colitis to completely normal, perfect.
Yeah.
And it was sort of a wake-up call for me, which was, you can't just give probiotics. You've got to feed the whole inner garden. And
Absolutely.
What it likes is certain foods, and it likes all the polyphenols.
Yes,
and the
polyphenols.
Colorful, dark, rainbow-colored chemicals that are in plant foods. There are certain plant foods have more of them, like the berries and so forth.
Absolutely. Yeah, the polyphenols are gold. And to me, I think that's actually probably one of the things that plays a role with the French paradox is the polyphenols that are found in red wine.
Yeah.
I think that's, definitely what you're doing is you're actually feeding, patients love me because the two things that I always prescribe to my patients is chocolate and red wine. All right. And they're high.
I'm not saying people like wine drinking, but I wouldn't give it as an extra thing.
No, right. But I'm just razzing. But the polyphenols are the miracle food prebiotics for the gut. Absolutely.
So tell us a story about a patient who had a screwed up microbiome and what you did and how they got better.
Oh, I've had, multiple patients. For example, I just had a patient I followed up today, 18-year-old with fatty liver disease and sort of pre-diabetes picture. And lo and behold, I did the testing for him, and his Akkermansia mucinophilia was almost undetectable.
Yeah.
And now, fatty liver, typically, like you said, we used to see that in patients who were drinking alcohol. What we're now finding out is that fatty liver is the thing that is being driven by disruption of the gut microbiome. So what's happening is when you destroy the mucus, the protective mucus lining of the gut, some of those bad bacteria get into the body, get into the circulation. They go into the liver and causes systemic inflammation, which in turn causes fatty liver. And there was just, I don't know if you saw the recent paper about this, about what is termed non-alcoholic fatty liver is actually from alcohol produced by gut bacteria.
Yeah.
So some bacteria will actually produce alcohol, which in turn poisons the liver.
It ferments, right?
It ferments.
Exactly. Just like, when you get this bloating food baby, that's actually your bacteria fermenting the food you're eating, and certain foods are more fermentable, like starches and sugars.
Exactly.
Yeah, we actually have seen cases of patients who literally had elevated blood alcohol levels.
Yeah, autobrewery syndrome.
From the bacteria in their gut.
Yeah.
And they literally got pulled over and found, they had, like, for drunk driving.
Exactly. And it actually, the autobrewery syndrome is, I've had a couple of patients with that, and they typically that's usually been attributed to yeast overgrowth. Mm-hmm. But there also are cases specifically with bacteria that can also produce alcohol. You're basically, it's like it's a brewery in your body.
Yeah, you don't need a Budweiser.
No. This Bud's for you.
So what happened when you have this patient and you?
Yeah, you basically you work on doing dietary interventions.
Do you get better when you fix this, or you just?
This was just I was just offhand because I just had this patient this morning, and it was a very interesting case because the thing that really stood out is that his protective Akkermansia mucinophilia was quite low. He was also a vegan. which, we could discuss, what is the best diet? I don't believe that veganism is actually the best thing. I think we're omnivores, and, I come from a family of dentists, so I always talk to my patients, see that thing right there? That's a canine tooth. And a canine tooth is designed to chew meat and to chew fish. And we have specific enzymes in the body, which are pancreatic elastase and proteases, which are designed to digest protein.
Yeah.
So we are, like Michael Pollan said it best, eat plants, eat food, real food, mostly plants, not too much.
Right.
So a plant-based diet with healthy amounts of fish and lean meat on occasion is really probably the best type of diet.
Yeah.
And I think some of my most difficult patients are the ones who are sort of strict vegans for whatever reason, ethical or spiritual or whatever, religious, can oftentimes get into really difficult situations because it's like a cat chasing their tail. They don't have the specific nutrients to patch up and heal the body.
Doesn't all that plant stuff help the microbiome?
It does, absolutely. It's going to help the microbiome, but he had almost no omega-3s.
It was really nutritionally deficient.
Right.
See, unless people are supplementing, they get super nutritional.
Well, exactly. You can have a person like it was just in the news recently. It was a 22-year-old, I think it was over in England, who was living on potato chips, white bread, and French fries, and went blind.
French fries,
and went blind.
There's no vitamin A.
Yeah, went blind.
Yeah.
So you can be walking and talking, but you can be severely malnourished.
Yeah.
Because there's about 40 nutrients that your body needs on a regular basis. And I like to also make the analogy to my patients is like your body is like a house that's being built and broken down 24/7. You need all those building materials to make that house. You need carpeting, you need wood, you need glass, you need all these materials. And if those materials aren't there, then the structure may still be standing, but if you don't have glass, the wind comes in, the rain comes in, the snow comes in, and then you're going to have problems with your
The
body.
problem with traditional medicine is they don't look for those building blocks. They don't test for them. And that's what's different here at the Ultra Wellness Center. We actually look for these things. We find them. I mean, when was the last time a doctor looked for acromancy in someone with fatty liver? Probably never, right? Other than us here or some functional medicine.
Or check their omega-3s or check their vitamin D. Exactly, yeah, right.
And so those kinds of diagnostics are available and help us really think differently about treating disease. I mean, most doctors understand hepatic encephalopathy, but most doctors who are treating fatty liver don't actually think about what's going on in the gut microbiome or how to treat it. They don't even know how to fix it.
Well, the thing that one of my pet peeves, Mark, and I'm sure you've heard this too, is that patients will go see the expert endocrinologist for their diabetes and the expert gastroenterologist, and they tell the patients to eat anything they want. That is absolutely...
What, you mean food has something to do with our health?
No, it does? Oh my God.
What a radical idea. No, my favorite was once I was at King Ranch. I was playing basketball at lunch because they had these basketball pickup games, and there was one of these people there was playing, and he was a gastroenterologist. And I said to him, you ever thought of like how food might impact what's happening in the gut, because you're putting literally pounds of this stuff through that tube every day? You think it might have something to do with why people have digestive symptoms? It's like, gee, I never thought of that. That seems so interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm like, holy crap. But yeah, I mean, your microbiome is dependent on what you feed it. How you grow your inner garden depends on what you're eating. And you can create a nasty garden with weeds and toxins and bad stuff and poisonous plants, or you can create a really flourishing, rich garden that actually takes care of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also the other aspect thing that a lot of even physicians aren't even aware of is that most of your immune system is in your gut.
Yeah.
So when you disrupt that ecosystem, that rainforest inside of you, you are disrupting the immune system. And we're talking about fecal transplants. There's a recent study that showed that children with autism who got stool transplants had a marked improvement up to 2 years out from just replacing the gut microbiome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty powerful. So there is no pharmacological.
Because autism is like an encephalopathy. It's a metabolic encephalopathy.
To some degree, absolutely.
It's like a hepatic encephalopathy.
Yeah, I mean, that's to me, that's sort of the canary in the coal mine in our environment today. That we have what 1 in 68 kids having autism now, depending on where you are living in America and around the world. That is a big issue. And what we're finding out is there's more and more connection to the microbiome.
Yeah, I mean, so 60% of our immune system is in the gut.
Yep.
And essentially, there's a sewer that's on the other side of the lining of your gut, which is only 1 cell thick. And on the other side is your immune system. And there's a breakdown, which can come from having C-sections, antibiotics, acid-blocking drugs, stress, poor diet.
Yep.
All that stuff damages the gut, creates a leaky gut, gluten, dairy, all those things. Then you get this inflammation. So we treat a lot of people with autoimmune disease here at the Ultra Wellness Center. And often the place we start is the gut.
Yeah.
So tell us like how that works and about some patients you might have had with autoimmune disease and how working on their gut helped them.
Yeah, so I mean, I had one patient in particular who I saw who came in. It was a great story. She came in and she was having MS as her diagnosis. She also had autoimmune disease, multiple sclerosis, and she also had infertility. And I did a complete workup on her. She had dysbiosis, had bacterial and yeast overgrowth, also had sensitivity to gluten, and had also some, not a big level, but some level of mercury in the body. So I worked on diet, worked on, both prebiotics and probiotics to clean up the gut, got her completely off of gluten. And lo and behold, guess what? Her multiple sclerosis went away.
Amazing.
Disappeared. All right, not to say that.
And you got her medals out too.
Yeah, not to say that all cases of multiple sclerosis are due to that, but there are many pathways to multiple sclerosis, just that there are many pathways to Alzheimer's disease.
Or any disease.
Or any disease, exactly, because the body will manifest it in only certain inflammatory pathways. So ultimately, she got off of her medications. Her MS to this day is in complete remission. She has no symptoms, on no meds, and as a side effect, she got pregnant.
Wow, that's a good side effect.
Yeah, and she was happy.
So that's an amazing story. And I think, for people who are listening, functional medicine is a new way of thinking about disease. It's not based on the label, MS. It's based on the cause. And you can have one disease that has many causes, like MS, which can be caused by heavy metals, by Lyme disease, by Epstein-Barr, by the gut microbiome, by gluten, like B12 deficiency, right? You can have so many things that are driving this same syndrome.
Right.
And the personalization of medicine is what functional medicine is all about. And that's really what's different here about how we practice medicine at the Ultra Wellness Center, because we're looking at each person as an individual. We're creating a personalized medicine and personalized health, which is a radically new way of thinking. And we just lump everybody with the same symptoms into the same categories, but it doesn't tell you anything about the cause. And I always say, just because you know the name of your disease doesn't mean you know what's wrong with you, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what we do through very detailed histories here, through very advanced diagnostic testing to look at some of these things.
Well, absolutely. And I think the enjoyable thing that I'm sure that you experience yourself is that every patient is unique.
Yeah.
I've never treated two patients the same way from a functional approach.
No.
Completely different, even in the same family. Everyone is, and that's actually the fun part about it is I call it, the person comes in with their own genetic uniqueness, their own, personality makeup, their own story, all of these, things that you can paint the picture of, where were they when they got sick? Where are they now? And what are the things that, that we can remove? Like the 4-hour. What
sort of like being Dr. House, right? It's like medical detective.
Yeah, like medical detective, exactly. And I think one of the most important things that I always tell people who are training in medicine is to listen to the patient.
Yeah, they'll tell you what's wrong.
Absolutely.
And when and what.
Exactly. And sometimes I just have to sort of bite my mouth because you want to always interrupt patients. Say, what about this and what about that? I just sort of let patients talk more and I just sort of listen and then I'll ask the questions later. And when you really do that and let the patients tell their story in their own way, in their own terms, and get that out, you really find out all the little details and you can play house and play detective, try to, piece the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, we in regular medicine, we are trained to create an exclusive history. In other words, someone comes in with a symptom, let's say they have heartburn or reflux or chest pain. We don't want to know anything else about them except about that. Right? We want all the details about that. We don't know if they have a rash, are their fingernails cracked, do they have eczema, is their butt itch? Like, don't talk to me about any of that because that's not relevant. And in functional medicine, all of it's relevant because it's a clue that could give you a clue to what's actually happening for that patient. And that's what's so beautiful about this process. I think I used to work in the emergency room. I think you did too. it's boring. It's boring because someone comes in and he's like, okay, it's the heart attack treatment, it's the asthma treatment, it's the kidney stone
it's a
treatment.
protocol.
It's like you just look at the nurse, you go, oh, heart attack. Okay, and they know what the orders are, they know what to do. You just barely write it down, and it's like rote and boring. It's a formula, like a recipe.
Right.
In functional medicine, there is no recipe.
Yeah.
There's actually having to think every time you see a patient.
Right. And being trained in traditional medicine and also in a functional medicine approach, there's definitely, if you're having a heart attack, I want a thrombolytic. Absolutely.
You blew out your knee. You need knee surgery.
Right. I want you to follow the protocol that has been shown to work. But for chronic conditions, acute care medicine, which is basically the scalpel or the prescription pad, are probably some of the more toxic things that you can have. A lot of what I see in my patients here is iatrogenica imperfecta. All right, which basically
translate that, doctor.
Translate that. Which basically means the doctor did it, right? So the patient comes in and they're on a whole laundry list of medications, and these are interacting. They're on proton pump inhibitors. They're causing calcium. The acid blockers. They're causing calcium deficiency, mineral deficiency, B12 deficiency. So there's these drugs have their risk benefit, and the less drugs you use in medicine, the better off the patient is.
Yeah, it's hard because that's what we know how to do. It's what we're trained to do.
Yeah.
It's like we don't know how to treat people with food medicine. We don't know how to restore a gut from a messed up gut to a healthy gut, and that's really what we do in functional medicine.
Yeah, and the other important thing that it's important for physicians out there who are new to functional medicine, also for patients, is to realize these things don't happen overnight. It can take time, but usually sometimes you can see a difference in days to weeks. Sometimes it could take months, and sometimes it takes years. It depends on what's going on.
So true. I mean, sometimes it's almost miraculous, and you go like, it's hard to believe. I remember when I first started practicing, I would go, okay, do these things, take this, eat this, and then they'd call back a few weeks later, or a month later. I'm like, how you doing? Well, I'm all better. I'm like, what? You're better from that? Because it was such a contradiction to everything I learned. But then I started to trust it, and I started to expect it. And I just remember this one patient, she had psoriatic arthritis, which is a horrible condition where you've got psoriasis, but your joints are being deformed and destroyed. You're in pain all the time. But she had a bunch of other stuff, which, quote, was unrelated. She had depression. She had insomnia. She was overweight. She had terrible reflux and heartburn, and she was having bloating and SIBO and irritable bowel. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see. She's inflamed. Everything she's got is inflamed. The weight is inflamed. Depression's and inflammation in the brain. Her gut symptoms are about inflammation in the gut. Everything's related to inflammation. So why don't we sort of just start simple and clear out things that are causing potential inflammation? So we got rid of gluten and dairy in your diet, and sugar and starch and all processed food. We got her gut cleaned up. I gave her an antibiotic and antifungal and a little gut program and a couple of nutrients to help her fight some inflammation that she was suffering from. And 6 weeks later, she came back. Her psoriasis was gone. Her arthritis was gone. Her reflux and irritable bowel was gone. Her depression was gone. She lost 20 pounds. I'm like, and she got off all her medications, even the one that was costing $50,000 a year to suppress her immune system from the psoriasis. Wow. And it seems like a miracle, but it really isn't when you follow this methodology. And that's what we've been doing here for decades, practicing functional medicine up in Berkshire, in the middle of nowhere. It's pretty amazing.
Well, it's really interesting because most of the patients who have psoriasis are going to see dermatologists, and most dermatologists do not have a clue about the gut microbiome, nor are they testing or thinking about it.
Right.
And then if they get psoriasis and they develop psoriatic arthritis, which is arthritis in addition to the skin condition, because I always tell patients is the skin is contiguous with the gut. So if I draw a line on the skin and I keep drawing a line, and go down my tongue, and I go into my esophagus, down to my stomach, into my intestine, I'm still on the same surface.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, and you know this, Mark,
that's true. I never thought of that.
Yeah, it's
kind of a cool thought.
That's how I explain it to patients. So the skin is contiguous with the gut. It's an ectodermal tissue, and when there's skin issues, think gut.
It's really a tube. It's outside your body. Is your gut.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, when I have a patient with psoriasis, eczema, acne, rosacea, I treat their gut.
Yeah.
And I don't put stuff all over their face or on their body.
Exactly.
To suppress the inflammation. I get rid of that. And it's like really a miracle. I mean,
it is.
I mean, dermatology is not something that I'm an expert in, although I was trained as a family doctor in dermatology. But I feel like we get the most amazing results just for something as simple as fixing the gut and changing the diet.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The body's this interconnected, complex, self-healing organism. I mean, that's the big thing is I often ask patients, I mean, do you think you're going to get better? And if I have a patient who thinks they're going to get better, then together we're going to get better. But if I have a patient who doesn't think they're going to get better, then I try to get them to change their mindset. Because even though somebody comes to me, they really almost believe I'm not going to get better.
Well, that's what they've been taught.
Exactly.
You have to live with this. You
Exactly.
have to manage your disease.
Right.
I want to manage it. I want to get rid of it.
And the body's ability to self-heal is amazing, as you know, Mark. It's really amazing. There's an intelligence in the body that we, have, as much as we know about the body, there's a lot more that we don't know. And the more I practice medicine, I think the more humble I become because I realize how little I know. It's how complex it is. It's really, really complex. But there's so much that we can do for patients that, they've gone to, the Mayo Clinic, they've gone to Mass General, they've gone to, X, Y, and Z everywhere else. And they, as you say, the resort medicine, we come here for last resort. I mean,
I literally just walked from my office to here after seeing a patient who went to the Mayo Clinic who had chronic dizziness, chronic constipation, fatigue, insomnia, all these different symptoms that they couldn't find, quote, anything wrong with him. And I'm like, well, I know what's wrong with you. You've got this, this, and this, and this based on looking at it through the functional medicine lens.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, I think it was Sid Baker, I think, who made the analogy, or maybe it was Jeff Bland, is that, if you have a dime and you're on a dark street and you lose your dime over there and the street light's over here and you're looking under the street light, which is where you're testing. So most of the testing is basically looking where the dime isn't.
Yeah.
All right. So the type of testing that we do here, which is nutritional, metabolic, toxic, genomic testing, is spreading out the searchlight to find that dime.
Absolutely. That's such a key point because you go to the doctor and they say, well, we've tested everything and all your results are normal. And the implication is it's all in your head. But I would say I don't agree with that because, either two things are true. One, the patient's crazy or the doctor's missing something. And I'm going to bet on the doctor's missing something. Yeah. Because when we start to look, we find all sorts of stuff in places that nobody's looked before because they're looking under the street lamp instead of actually where the problem really is.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And I think, what you alluded to before was really important, which is that functional medicine is about getting rid of the things that impair health and putting in the things that help the body thrive. And then the body can take over and with this amazing intelligence can repair and heal from all sorts of things.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And that's what we do. So one of the complaints we see a lot is fatigue. Everybody's tired, right? And in functional medicine, we talk a lot about something called the mitochondria, which you're really an expert in. And it's something that is really one of the keys to solving many problems and puzzles in chronic disease, whether it's Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or diabetes or obviously fatigue issues and so forth. Fibromyalgia. Tell us about what are these mitochondria? How do we look at them? And what do we do about it?
Okay, so for those who don't know about mitochondria, it's another area of mine that is really a fascinating sort of interest of mine. So our mitochondria are actually ancient bacteria.
See, poop, bacteria, you're in the same track.
Absolutely, right. So
you have a one-track mind.
Right, and I'll never forget, I went to a lecture given by Jeff Bland, and he was talking about how antibiotics, which are designed to kill bacteria, can oftentimes affect mitochondria because our mitochondria, which are the power plants of our bodies, are actually way back when were ancient bacteria that became engulfed in our cells and are now the power plants.
And they have different DNA.
They have totally different DNA. Yeah, in fact, Lynn Margulis, who was married to Carl Sagan, I had the opportunity to meet her and have lunch with her.
And
it was amazing.
For those of you who don't know, she's sort of an icon in the world of biology.
Yes.
First described this whole phenomenon.
Yes, exactly. So it was right during the 60s. Everyone was studying the nuclear DNA, which is the double helix DNA. And she made an observation that there's DNA in the cell in a circular form. And she goes, oh, what does that mean? Where did that come from? So she was actually a protist. She studied small ancient bacteria, and she realized that DNA reminded her of the ancient bacteria. And then she came up with the hypothesis that eukaryotic cells, which are the cells that we have, actually way back when those little bacteria came and sort of created this symbiotic relationship where you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back.
Yeah.
And that's really, how we have. mitochondria. And mitochondria are so important. And this I always tell patients is that you take cyanide, you will die in a matter of minutes. And the reason for that is cyanide flips the switch on your mitochondria.
Turns them off.
Turns them off like that.
Yeah, basically that's what happens when you die. You have no energy anymore.
Lights out.
And your lights are out.
Yeah.
And yet there's varying forms of lights out with mitochondria that are really common, whether it's autism we're finding now, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's.
Right, and the interesting thing about it is there's a thing called the bottleneck theory of mitochondria, which is that, let's say...
Before you go on, so mitochondria, for those people, they're these little tiny things inside your cells. There can be hundreds of thousands of them. And they basically take oxygen that you breathe and the food that you eat, and they burn them like an engine. And outside, and out comes energy, which is what runs your body in the form of ATP. So that's what has to happen every day, every minute for you to run every chemical reaction in your body, to run everything that you're doing.
Everything.
And when that process gets bunged up, you get sick.
Exactly. That's very well put. Exactly. You get bunged up, especially the highly metabolic tissues. So things like the brain, things like the heart are the highly dense mitochondria. And then the other thing, which is new in the medical world, is brown fat. So brown fat is highly packed with mitochondria. When you look at it under a microscope, it actually looks brown. And brown fat is the type of fat that we have that generates heat. And in order to activate our brown fat, we need to be cold. And how many people nowadays ever get really cold? Because we always like that thermostat right at 70 degrees.
Yeah.
It goes to 70.
I go in the ice bath every day.
Yeah, so right. So if the temperature goes to 71, we turn on the air conditioning, goes below, we turn on the heat, right? We keep in this thermonuclear zone, and we never actually activate our brown fat. And activating our brown fat by being in the cold. In fact, this past weekend I was at a mega institute, and I actually camped out, and it's a long story, but I brought my tent, and my tent didn't have the poles to it, so I had to sleep on the ground in my sleeping bag. And fortunately, the sleeping bag was a warm sleeping bag, but I got cold at night. But guess what? I slept great.
Yeah,
I slept great.
It's true. The best sleep I've had in years was when I went backcountry skiing with my daughter last spring, and we literally climbed 6 hours straight up to this yurt, which was literally 6 feet under the snow. We had to dig it out. And I slept in my sleeping bag there. It was freezing. And I slept the best I slept ever.
Yes, you're like in a semi-hibernation.
Yeah, I actually bought something called a chili pad.
Yeah.
Which is essentially a cooling pad that you put on your mattress. So I can turn it down like 63 degrees at night because my wife likes it hot and I like it cold.
I think she did a little podcast about that.
She did. My wife's a comedian, and you can look her up at MyMiaLux on Instagram, and you can watch that funny spoof on how she has to wear a winter coat to bed with me, which is not quite true, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so mitochondria, and then, how do we test for mitochondria? When you go to most doctors don't even remember mitochondria in their training, nor do they ever test for it. So we test for organic acids for it. You can also...
It's a urine test. It's easy
urine
to
test,
do.
yeah, relatively easy to do. And you can also do genetic testing for mitochondria. There are some labs out there. Cortigen was one of the labs that we used to use, but they're no longer around. There's another one called Gene Savvy that does testing for mitochondria. And when you get an inherited mitochondrial issue, that's where, maybe seeing
That's
some
more
of those.
serious.
Yeah, that's much more serious. But you can also have a lot of acquired mitochondrial issues. And the good news is that we can heal our mitochondria when we actually go through periods.
Well, before you get to what heal, what messes them up?
What messes them up?
Yeah, what messes them up?
Well, excessive oxidative stress will do it. So infections, So excess amounts of free radicals, oxidative stress, because your mitochondria is like a fireplace. You throw logs into your fireplace, which is food, and you give off sparks. And you throw too much food, logs in the fireplace, you get too much sparks, and you get too much free radicals.
Too many calories.
Too many
bad calories.
Too many bad calories,
like
exactly.
Sugar and starch.
And too many bad calories not compensated by enough dietary antioxidants is another potential source. Antibiotics are huge.
Yeah.
Especially the floxins. I mean, that's a whole topic unto itself, as being floxed, which I'm sure you've seen patients with that, because they definitely are bactericidal antibiotics are definitely poisonous to mitochondria, and statin medications. The ones that
the muscle aching that people get is because their mitochondria are getting injured.
Right. So the cardiologist handed out like Pez candy, right, Mark?
Yeah.
And it should be in the It should be in the water, right? We should just, you know.
They wanted to sell it at McDonald's.
Yeah, right. Just
Yeah, have one with your Big Mac.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's
no, but they are, and they do cause muscle damage, and some people are more susceptible to it.
Absolutely.
And there's genetic, I think, variations in how people respond to statins, and that's probably has to do with their mitochondrial function.
Right.
But it's for sure. So toxins also, like heavy metals and pesticides, are poisonous. Too much sugar and starch and calories. Oxidative stress that comes from inflammation. I mean, that's why when you have the viral flu, you feel achy and tired and sore because your mitochondria are getting nuked.
Yep.
Right? Nutritional deficiencies, right? We need all sorts of nutrients like carnitine, CoQ10, B vitamins, all play a big role in the mitochondrial function. So,
and phosphatidylcholine for the membranes of the mitochondria. The other thing that's also really important, and as you're well aware of that, is the concept of doing fasting periodically. And I find this actually quite fascinating because a lot of religions have fasting as part of their religious belief system. And when you actually look at that, giving your gut a time period of rest, and when you go through these periods of fasting, your body starts eating up the bad mitochondria. That's autophagy. We call that the body's eating itself. So
like
when
a garbage truck cleaning up all the waste from your cells, which helps you renew and repair and regenerate, and actually get younger.
And intermittent fasting can do amazing things for the body.
And what is that? That's like when you eat between a 8-hour window?
Yeah, there's multiple ways to do that. You can eat 16 hours without food, eat during an 8-hour window, or maybe on the weekends just have water or a juice fast or something like that. There's different ways of doing that. But when you cut back on your calories dramatically and you do that for an extended period of time, your body goes into what's called ketosis, as you well know, and then your body also starts to generate increased antioxidant enzyme systems, and it also starts to clean up and sweep the house, gets rid of all the bad cells.
Eating, snacking, and eating all the way till bed and waking up and having breakfast, that's the worst thing.
No, exactly.
Well, it's great.
Unless you're like a teenager and you're like your metabolism has gone wild, you need to be fed all the time because you're just growing all the time. But 3 meals a day with snacks is probably not the best thing.
That's an important thing because a lot of people have mitochondrial issues, and I personally had severe mitochondrial issues because I got chronic fatigue syndrome from mercury, and my muscle enzymes went way up, and I had severe muscle aches and fatigue. And it was really working on my mitochondria by getting rid of the metals and fixing my gut and giving myself a lot of mitochondrial nutrients that really helped me recover from that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're actually working on some of the nutrients, like the nutrients that increase the NAD plus in the body, or even intravenous NAD, which is another for IV therapies that's been shown to be quite helpful for
brain issues,
absolutely,
trauma of the brain, and cognitive disorders.
Yep. Yeah. Very, very powerful. And actually, even for people who are floxed, that's actually one of the treatments.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is providing a lot of the nutrients. So 1, you have to stop doing all the bad things that be a problem. And 2, you have to provide the basic support to help them work better.
Yeah.
Right. So whether it's intermittent fasting or calorie restriction for periods of time, or days of fasting, whether it's these nutrients like NAD, which you can now take orally, CoQ10. And these are the kinds of things we look at in functional medicine. And at the Ultra Wellness Center, we can test for these things. We can see what's not working. And unless you look, you don't know what's going on. And that's really the beauty of this approach, because we might not see, quote, a disease, but we might see a dysfunction. And I've had patients with Parkinson's disease I have one now who I've had 10 years of Parkinson's, and he's doing amazing and hasn't progressed. In fact, got better from where he was by working on all these things.
Yeah, Parkinson's is tough. It depends where you catch them. But the big thing is to try to arrest the progression and try to reverse it if you can.
Yeah, and a lot of it is a mitochondrial disease. We know well that CoQ10 and other things help with Parkinson's, and it's actually a mitochondrial problem, like many diseases.
Well, also, the interesting thing is that they're also finding a direct connection with the gut microbiome in Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
Because interestingly, there's some patients, Dr. Barity, he had some patients who had C. difficile colitis. The patient also had Parkinson's. They got a stool transplant for their C. diff colitis. Guess what? The Parkinson's got better.
Yes.
Hey, wow.
Yes. Actually, I remember reading a study that people who constipation have a 300% increased risk.
The constipation is not benign, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had a guy today who was like, how often do you go? Like every 3 or 4 days. I'm like, that's not normal. He says, normal for me, I go every 3 or 4 days. I'm like, no, you should go twice a day. He's like, twice a day? what are you smoking? Like, I think that is not what people really think of as normal, but it really is.
Right.
And I think it connects the dots, the gut, the immune system, the mitochondria. It's all one system. Everything is connected to everything else. It's sort of like, the knee bone's connected to the thigh bone and all that, but it's actually true in the body.
Yeah.
And we treat people in all these silos with all these specialties.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it doesn't help them get to the issues that can really help them get better.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's also, I think, really important, and I've learned this the more experience I get, is I always go into each patient with what I call a Zen mind, very open-minded. I don't really, I just sort of listen, and I don't have any preconceived notions of what's going on. And if I just listen to them, make notes, and try to then connect the dots, and that way there's no preconceived. Well, I think you have this, or I think you have that. You can even do that in functional medicine. Like, I think you have leaky gut, or I think you have gluten. Well, guess what? There is no leaky gut. There is no gluten. Well, let's kind of look somewhere else. Maybe, maybe you've had a tick bite. Maybe you have pesticide poisoning exposure. Maybe you're glyphosate toxic. I mean, there's all different pathways that you can go down. And it does require, playing, detective.
Yeah, I remember I had a patient who grew up in the Bronx. Was very poor, and she lived in an apartment complex where cockroaches
They get sprayed. Yeah.
were crawling all over her, and she hated pests. So she moved to the suburbs, and she would have the exterminator come every month to spray inside and outside her house. And she had an entire barrel, like a 50-gallon barrel of chlordane, which is now banned in this country, and was exposed to this over and over and over. And she got Parkinson's at 50 years old.
Yeah.
And we helped her by detoxifying her, by working on her mitochondria and doing all those things we talked about.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I distinctly remember reading an article that was looking at Japanese men, and they had a higher incidence of Parkinson's as they ate more fruits and vegetables. So the logical conclusion is eat fruits and vegetables, get Parkinson's. Wrong.
Because of pesticides.
Exactly. Pesticide-laden fruits and vegetables.
Yeah. I mean, farmers are one of the worst. The farm workers are one of the worst exposed to pesticides and the highest rates of Parkinson's.
And then we are even talking about the herbicide Roundup, with the glyphosate and the effects on the gut microbiome. That's another big one. That to me is probably one of the big elephants in the room in modern day society.
Yeah, glyphosate. I mean, we actually test for glyphosate, and I was like, I'm going to test it. I don't probably have any because I eat organic and I don't avoid pesticides and I'm really careful what I eat. But the truth is, I travel half the time, so I don't always have control.
No, right, exactly.
And I checked my urine, and I was like, holy crap, I'm probably in the 50th percentile for glyphosate. I thought it'd be in like the 10th percentile.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is not good.
Yes, exactly. And the other thing that it's been touted is that glyphosate is safe because it doesn't affect any of the biochemical pathways in the body. Well, lo and behold, it actually affects the chitinase pathway, which is actually how the bacteria have their metabolism. So when you're using glyphosate, you're actually messing up the metabolic pathways of bacteria, especially gut bacteria.
Yeah, it also affects glutathione and other things. There's transgenerational effects.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things we do here as well. We deal a lot with understanding how toxins affect the body, how to help the body detoxify, and do it in a way which actually creates profound results.
Yeah.
What are the biggest things you think about when you think about toxins, and how do we sort of look at those in our practice, and what do we do and see?
Well, it's I actually have given talks on toxins with God rest his soul, Walter Crinian. He was a big.
He died?
Yes, he died. Yeah, he died. Yeah, and there was we used to talk together about this seminal article. I believe it was in Science. It was called the exposome, which is the sum total of all the different toxins that we get exposed to.
And everything. It's our diet, stress, your microbiome. All those are.
Exactly. And to some degree, there is a little bit of survival of the fittest. So the people who can detoxify well will actually survive in modern society better. When you sort of like the cockroaches that are resistant to DDT. I mean, that's
not me. I'm susceptible.
So the toxins that we're exposed to are probably one of the biggest sources is pharmaceutical industry. I consider pharmaceuticals as toxins. Yes, they're toxins, but just like if you know what to give at the right, poison at the right dose at the right thing.
Dose makes the poison.
Dose makes the poison, exactly. And what the big dirty secret is that these chemicals, get peed out and pooped out, and they go into the water systems, and no water systems are actually checking for some of these chemicals, hormones, antibiotics, pharmaceuticals.
And there's been studies on this. They find these in there.
Totally. And I believe, without question, that the pharmaceuticals, which are everywhere, when you look, people are, taking, handfuls of different pharmaceuticals. These are getting into the water system, and I believe they're actually probably affecting us in some way. So having clean water, clean food are some of the ways that which we can, help with our exposure to toxins.
Yeah, and the environmental working group.
Clean air, yeah, exactly. The environmental working group is a good resource.
They have all this of how to avoid toxins in your seafood, in your meat, in your vegetables, in your household cleaning products, in your personal care products.
Yep.
Great resource, EWG.org.
Yep, yeah, EWG, exactly, yeah, and just being aware of it is important. And I talked earlier jokingly about red wine. Well, the dirty secret about California and all the wines in the United States is they're filled with pesticides, fungicides, and glyphosate
and arsenic.
Yeah, so if you're going to have wine, you want to make sure it's organic or from Europe, because they don't allow to the same degree that we have in the States.
I saw this guy had a wine filter the other day, like a water filter. I was like, wow, that's
I don't know if it'll actually filter all that stuff.
I don't know. I'm going to try it.
but again, they've shown that, Cheerios and all these food products, I have glyphosate in them.
Yeah.
Even some of the things that are quote unquote organic,
yeah,
you can find glyphosate in them. So
yeah, I just read that the Impossible Burger, which is this plant-based, healthy, quote, soy burger, which is GMO soy, has 11 times the glyphosate levels of the Beyond Meat, which is made from pea protein, because soybeans are sprayed with glyphosate.
Wow.
That's striking.
Yeah.
Wow. And so you're trying to do something healthy, and then you're ending up poisoning yourself with glyphosate by eating a soy burger.
Right, yeah. And I think that, people are trying to be healthy, but sometimes they're making the wrong choice. They're sort of, like I had this one guy who thought, being a vegetarian is good and eating soy is good. So the guy was eating soy burgers, tofu burgers, and all the soy stuff. The guy literally grew breasts. He was starting to have gynecomastia from all the estrogen effect of the.
It's mostly the processed soy.
Yeah,
because the whole soy, traditionally, if you're eating it in reasonable amounts, won't do that.
Right.
But yeah.
It was all the process, exactly. Yeah. Highly processed, exactly.
Which we think is going to health food, like a turkey soy thing, or a turkey or soy bacon or a soy burger.
They're all Frankenfoods.
Yeah, it's still highly processed, and it's not a whole food plant-based diet.
Exactly.
Yeah, so just talking about the mitochondria, going back to it for a minute. I was just remembering a patient I had who had heart failure. Now, we think of heart failure as this one-way street. You get it gets worse, you try to manage it with a lot of medication, but it turns out that it's a mitochondrial problem, and you can actually treat it with mitochondrial nutrients. And I recently had a guy who was a healthy-ish 70-year-old guy who developed heart failure, and he had a number of things going on with him that we treated that were underlying inflammation, but I gave him a bunch of support for his mitochondria, ribose and carnitine and CoQ10 and magnesium and a bunch of stuff. And his ejection fraction, which is the strength at which you can pump blood out of your heart, went from like 30%, which is a few steps away from a heart failure, to over 50%, which is pretty much normal.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing when you see that. And it's, again, not something traditional cardiologists will look, let me see your mitochondria. Like, they don't know how to think about it or test it or look at it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But and obviously, your heart doesn't rest, right? Even when you're sleeping, your heart's pumping.
You hope
so. Mitochondria is really important for the heart. And absolutely, there are cases of patients having improvements of heart failure and reversal of heart failure with mitochondrial nutrient support.
I have many of those cases. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. So one of the things that we do also here at the Ultra Wellness Center is intravenous nutrition. Can you talk about why that's important, what it does, and who it's good for?
Well, sure. I mean, there's intravenous nutrition is a catch-all term for giving nutrients through the veins and sort of bypassing the gut for absorption. And there are some patients that, for whatever reason, they may not be absorbing their nutrients as well. So some of the things that we use here would include things like the Myers cocktail. We might also use.
And what's in that?
B vitamins, magnesium, and B vitamins are very, very, Bruce Ames is the one who brought my attention to the B vitamins, because a lot of people have subclinical genetic deficiencies where they need higher levels of B vitamins. So giving B vitamins actually supports mitochondrial function.
Yeah.
So when you give these B vitamins and magnesium, you can boost the effect of mitochondria through the augmented effects. And then glutathione intravenously is also a fantastic tool. IV vitamin C, we use that for a host of different things. And
You mentioned the IV NAD.
yeah, IV NAD, yeah, that I think is actually, that's really amazing stuff. It's really, really cool. So there are patients who do need, I don't want to say that everybody who walks through the door needs an IV, but if you want to support, and people who are sicker, people have more unexplained fatigue, you can definitely do that. There was a study with IV vitamin C and sepsis.
Infection.
So this is a really interesting thing. So IV vitamin C, we use it here for patients who have potential cancer, chronic infections, Epstein-Barr virus, et cetera, flu or whatever.
Issues, yeah.
And so at high levels, vitamin C is actually a pro-oxidant. It's not actually an antioxidant, it's actually a pro-oxidant. And the interesting thing is that there are some studies out now that if you go into a hospital and you have septic shock, your mortality, which is normally about 40% of people who die in the hospital, if you give them IV vitamin C along with, I think, steroids and a little bit of thiamine, the mortality went from 40% to 9%.
Wow.
So it's a 4-fold decrease in death.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And there's no drug that can do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So you go from like 10% to, or 40% down to about less than 10% mortality. Pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing.
Powerful stuff. And it's cheap.
Yeah, it's very cheap.
Yeah. So you're not going to
see
a lot of research with that with big pharma, because they're not going to make money on it.
It's true. There's a gap in research. A lot of things we do know work clinically. We've all had experience with for decades. Doesn't get the funding because the NIH isn't funding it, and neither is drug companies. So we're kind of stuck having to look at smaller studies or small groups of people are studying this. So we're doing all these things we talked about here at the Ultra Wellness Center. It's a really unique practice. We have, 4 physicians, 2 physician's assistants, 4 nutritionists, a whole bunch of nurses, and we're taking care of people in a team approach where people come in, they get this full evaluation. We're the medical detectives. We find problems that most people have struggled to solve for decades, and often very quickly we know what to do, and we support them over time with coaching and with encouragement and follow-up visits. And it's really a pretty unique center here at the Ultra Wellness Center, and collectively, we've had probably 60 years of collective experience in practicing functional medicine, which is, I think, pretty unique in the world. We're getting older, but we're just getting smarter. And, we've all personally had challenges with our health, and we've used this model to really help recover. And I remember when I was really sick, you and Dr. Bohm came over to my house and helped me think through what was going on, because my brain wasn't working, because my gut wasn't working. And it's just so rewarding to see these patients. You had a recent case that you wanted to share about Alzheimer's, right?
Yeah, it was a fantastic case. It was a patient who I saw who came down from up north in Canada and was given a diagnosis up there of having Alzheimer's, and was pretty much sold,
Get your affairs in order.
Get your affairs in order, exactly. And there's not much we can do for you. So he came down.
Yeah, the treatment for Alzheimer's is a lawyer.
He's a lawyer, right. And a rabbi or priest, right? Yeah. So the patient came down, and I saw her with her husband and did a complete workup. And as you know, through some of the writings of Dale Bredesen and also a functional medicine approach, is that Alzheimer's
called the Ultra Mind Solution was really good.
Ultra Mind. Yeah. But that wasn't about Alzheimer's though.
No, but it was.
Oh, well,
a lot of Alzheimer's cases about the brain.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So and I love the analogy.
I wrote that, by the way.
Yeah. the analogy of Alzheimer's is like a roof with 32 holes in it. And you're not going to fix it by just doing one hole. So I did a full workup on the patient. And the other thing, which most doctors and even dentists aren't aware, is the role of the oral bacteria.
Yeah.
There's actually some really interesting studies that when you have bad bacteria in your mouth,
yeah,
specifically gum disease, gingivitis, periodontal disease, Porphyromonas gingivalis, It highly causes systemic inflammation, which in turn affects the brain and causes brain inflammation and brain deterioration over time. So her workup included checking for heavy metals, checking for herpes viruses, because herpes simplex is also associated with that, checking for the ApoE4 genotype.
Which predisposes you but doesn't predestine you.
Exactly. Just because you have it doesn't mean you're going to get it, but you're one of those people who has a more robust immune response, so you have more inflammation, which is great on a short term, but on a long term basis, you don't want chronic inflammation. So she had a whole bunch of things. She had some mercury, she had some oral bacteria, she had some gut bacteria, she had some gluten issues, she had herpes simplex, she had the ApoE4 genotype. So I sort of worked on all of those things. We also changed her diet. And within a matter of months, her husband said, I have my wife back.
Wow.
Yeah, she was now able to converse, to talk. She can drive by herself now.
So you literally stopped and reversed the effects of Alzheimer's.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it was pretty
And
amazing.
what do you think it was of all those things that you did? Or was it all the holes?
It was all the holes, exactly. It was, and we talk about root cause. It's actually root causes. So I think there's sometimes there's one big one, but then there's all these other things that are supporting that also play a role. So I just addressed all of them in like a checklist fashion.
It's interesting you say that because traditional medicine is there's sort of the joke about neurology is diagnose and adios. Here's what you got, nothing to do. I'll see you later. And I think it's certainly the approach now with Alzheimer's because we spent billions of dollars on hundreds and hundreds of studies with nothing to show for it. It's because we've been looking down the wrong path.
Right, because we've been looking at amyloid plaques, which are a hallmark of actual inflammation/infection in the brain. Just like cholesterol doesn't cause heart disease. Cholesterol does not cause heart disease. Inflammation causes heart disease. Cholesterol is a bystander.
Yes.
Trying to repair that inflammatory process.
Like the body's Band-Aid.
Right. So beta amyloid in the brain is actually an antimicrobial peptide. It tells you that the body is trying to fight off some type of infection, be it a spirochete from Lyme disease, syphilis, a virus, or a fungi.
Yeah.
So that's, beta amyloid, we've been, saying, if we get rid of the beta amyloid, find a drug to remove the beta amyloid.
It's the wrong thinking is the problem. And in functional medicine, here at the Ultra Wellness Center, we do a different kind of thinking, which is what are all the treatable things that we can find that could help this patient's health get better in general, and that also helps the brain get better. So it's not to say that we can come in here and cure all cases of Alzheimer's. That's not true. But we can certainly, especially if you're far advanced, but we can certainly, if we get it early enough, we can help to slow it down and maybe even reverse some of the effects by using this approach. And
absolutely.
Not only have you found this, I found this, and dozens and dozens of other doctors doing this approach across the country have done this, and yet it's still in the outside of healthcare.
Well, what's also really interesting is I'm seeing more and more doctors and nurses who are in mainstream medicine coming to see me and they're in like some of the best hospitals, best centers, because they can't get help in their system.
Oh, for sure. It's true. A lot of our patients are healthcare professionals.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think when a physician has either themselves or a close family member or spouse or whatever get a condition and you're butting your head against the wall with the mainstream approach, that's where you start, you sort of fall into functional medicine because this stuff's not working. I gotta find more, put more tools in my tool bag.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing here at the Ultra Wellness Center. We have a lot of tools. We have a different way of thinking. We work as a team, and we've been doing it for a long time. So if you're listening and you suffer with some chronic thing that hasn't gotten better, or you have any one of those diseases or conditions we talked about, or pretty much anything, we can really make a difference in helping people find the root cause, be medical detectives, and help people create a pathway that it gets them back to health. And that's really the goal here.
Yeah, and the other thing is, so many practices have what I call protocols. And the protocols are sort of like you do the same thing over and over for everyone. We don't really have protocols here. We have certain things that we do use in a lot of patients. We have an approach, but we don't have a rubber stamp. You're not going to come in at the Ultra Wellness Center and everybody gets the same treatment. That doesn't work.
Right.
Nada.
Exactly, because it's different for everybody.
Right. It's ours is very much personalized and proactive and a deep dive into nutritional, biochemical, genetic, toxic biology.
Yeah, and as you mentioned with that case with MS, that's one case with MS. Another case might be very different.
Exactly.
And I think think what you saw, that patient with Alzheimer's, someone else with Alzheimer's might need a very different approach.
Exactly.
So that's really the beauty of functional medicine. And you are one of the pioneers. You are a leader, and it's so great to have you here at the Ultra Wellness Center, Todd. Thank you for joining us on the Doctor's Pharmacy.
All right, thanks, Mark. Enjoyed it.
So if you've heard anything that piqued your interest, or you know anybody who's suffering or you're suffering, you can find out more about our center at the ultrawellnesscenter.com. That's just ultrawellnesscenter.com. And if you love this podcast, we'd love to hear from you again. Leave a comment, share with your friends and family on social media, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you next week on the Doctor's Pharmacy.
Thank you, Mark.
One is Dr.
All right. Well, that was Dr. Mark Hyman's video that I wanted to share. And again, I really appreciate everybody being here today. I did want to say that I'm going to close here in just a minute. But when the webinar closes, there is a one-question survey, and I think it'll pop up when I close this or when you get out. But regardless of that, there is you will get an email tomorrow for those of you who attended via Zoom. It's just automatic thing I have set up. And I told it to send that survey again. So if it doesn't pop up or you forget to do it, tomorrow you'll get an email saying, thanks for attending our webinar. Oh, by the way, here's the survey. And I really appreciate it if you would fill that out. Because I need, I mean, it's a one question. Okay, you just yes or no kind of thing. But, you know, I didn't mention, but, you know, United Way, we're a United Way community partner. And so when I do things like this for the community, I need to be able to tell them that the stuff we're doing is making a difference in people's lives. And so by you participating in the first place, and then by you clicking on that survey and answering the question, we'll provide the information I need for United Way. Okay. So anyway, thanks ever so much again for attending the webinar today. When I get the presentation from Dr. Apostol, I will email it to you all one way or the other. And then this video recording, after I download it and do all the other things I have to do to it, will be posted on the Gathering Place website. So you can always watch it again, or you can invite your friends to watch it who weren't able to join us today. So thank you again. I hope you learned something new today. I really appreciate the support of everybody for the Gathering Place in Brazoria County, and God bless you all.